Well, good afternoon, good evening, soon to be. Hi, Rom, over on the West Coast. You kind of got a good midday slot here. Welcome to Enter the Matrix.
Hello.
I'm not sure. We're all going to drink the blue pill. All right, today. This is the blue pill that we're going to eat. And
Which blue pill?
the blue pill, it's the comms blue, right?
Oh, clear. I get it. Clear com. I thought you were.
Get it? Yeah,
I thought you were talking about
I'm
the
trying.
prop pill. Aleve. You mean Aleve, right? It used to be something else.
So today's topic, the Eclipse frame with FreeSpeak and Agent IC, right? You know, a lot of what we're talking about now, we've been all over the map literally for the last almost a month now, and we're coming back around to a little more specific topics. And one of the things I've always heard people talk about is how do I make my FreeSpeak system bigger? All right, we understand the constraints, and Rom will remind us how many belt packs we can and can't use. But a lot of times it's about the number of antennas, or the other times it's about Agent IC. What's this thing? I think this internet thing, we're probably going to be in our house another couple weeks. I think we're going to be working remotely. I tell you what, if I had a nickel for every email I've gotten about Agent IC the last couple weeks, well, it would be a paycheck. But anyhow, today is really kind of that specifics. Now, I know some of you that are on, I'm looking at some of the names. I know that you'll have some understanding of Eclipse and the frame. Oh, there's Pete. He's got Agent IC up. If you've got access with your phones, Android, go to Google Play. If you have iOS, go to the App Store, download Agent IC. It's free. Put it to use. Those of you who have familiarity with Eclipse, hopefully there'll be a couple new things you pick up. Just go along with us. If you have something where you've had an experience, share it through the questions Q&A so the rest of the team can learn. Rom will be curating those as well as Pete. No, we don't have handouts for this. We are kind of going off script here. Pete has a piece of paper that he is handing out to himself. But you know, we all know how that is, and you do not believe the deposit I had to leave to get him out. So the point is, today is going to be pretty specific, but equally broad in that area. So questions, we'll let Rom get into this. We'll let him get flow in there, and as stuff comes up, put it in the Q&A. When it comes to a point where it ties in, Rom and Pete will pull it up, and we'll address that. And Rom's the kind of guy, he'll stay until the last question's over. And I have no doubt that he has a thought for today. At some point he will share, because he's that kind of guy. But anyhow, I'm going to throw it over to Mac and Pete to talk about Q&A and whatever thoughts they want to share. And then I'm clicking off my cameras to save bandwidth.
Yeah, this should be an instant replay queue. I should just hit a button and these words will come out.
We can get celebrities to do it. You know, Lady Gaga could do it, and Jimmy Fallon can do it. Exactly.
So you submit your questions via the little questions pull down menu in your GoToWebinar control panel. We will be curating the questions to some extent. It's unlikely that we'll get to every individual question, but we'll try to get to every topic and get your questions answered. You know, and if you don't feel thanks, Stan, I'll try that, because it's on this laptop, QLab. That'll be for tomorrow. But we will get the questions answered, and we'll try to get them all. Pete?
Well, this show, as near as I can tell, is following the Oprah Winfrey model for shows. Rom will have an exciting giveaway program for you when he presents.
You get an EHX program, and you get an EHX program. You get an EHX.
Well, it's a whole audience, and they also get a pink Cadillac at the same time. So I'm going to click off and ponder an empty question screen while you just take it away.
All
You
right.
can share. You can share now if you want to.
I can and I will. All right, great. So just to elaborate a little bit more, your questions are really what's going to be driving this. Obviously, you know, we have a broad spectrum of, I've seen some of the names on the list of people who've signed up, and some people are very familiar with EHX and Eclipse. Some people are new to it. Just a little brief intro here. Many of us are familiar with FreeSpeak II from working with the single RU base station. And I am going to start out with the matrix, and that's really what we want to see first. So the matrix, as you can see here, this is one of our matrices. This is what we call a median. It comes with, I don't know if you can see this. I'll try to zoom in a little bit. There's not great resolution, unfortunately, but there are 2 slots here on top, and then we have 7 slots that have cards that you can put in. The first 3 in this particular case are what we call MVX16s, which are analog cards. That's for 16 ports of analog in and out. And then the next one is an EQ card, which we have been using up until recently for FreeSpeak II in the matrix world. The advantage of using a matrix for FreeSpeak II instead of using the base station, which we're pretty much all familiar with, is anything that resides on the backplane of this matrix would now be available to the FreeSpeak belt packs. So heretofore, when we were using the base station, you would have 12 channels, and you could have 25 belt packs, depending on how many transceivers you had, and that was pretty much your limitation. However, now that you go to the matrix, we can add more transceivers. We can co-locate in the world of EQ. We could co-locate 2.4 and 1.9 transceivers and belt packs to be able to make a pretty large system. But the biggest advantage, of course, is that everything that's attached to the matrix is now available to the belt packs. For example, if you had a Dante card in the matrix, anything that was available on the Dante in the Dante world is now on the backplane of the matrix, and so I could make a stack of, let's say I'm an A2 and I wanted to have listen to all the lav mics that I'm going to be putting on talent in the show. I could stack all those mics into what we call a sort group, place it on my belt pack, and be able to scroll through on my belt pack, and we'll show you how to do that a little bit later, scroll through on my belt pack every microphone so I hear it just like the A1 hears it at the console. Obviously not with any effects or any EQ that the console is putting on, but I hear the basic signal, so I can fax the mic out pretty confidently before I, make my final call to the A1. Or I could take panels that are connected on that matrix, for example, put them in one of these sort groups and be able to scroll through and be able to have a point-to-point to the producer. I can point-to-point to the A1. I can point-to-point to the lighting person or the graphics person or the TD or the EIC. It makes life really, really much more flexible for the FreeSpeak belt pack user. Just to go a quick overview on what a matrix contains. This particular matrix, as I said, is the median. It has all these larger matrices have 2 CPU cards in the first 2 slots on the left here, the large cards, the vertical cards. Over on the far left-hand side, you see there are 8 slots for interface cards. The one we see in the upper left is an FOR22, which allows us to either use a 4-wire interface with hardware that I can adjust in the hardware inputs and outputs for, and each of these cards will do 2 ports. So I have 2 ports of 4-wire, or I can also configure it to connect to 2-way radios. So I can, from my panel or from my FreeSpeak belt pack or from my Agent IC client, which we'll talk about a little bit later, I can actually talk to a 2-way radio. Very, very effective and very highly used in house of worship facilities, where they have, I believe they call them parking ministers, where the people who are out in the parking lot, maybe there's an issue with, there was an accident and people are having a hard time getting in, so they can call into the, whoever is directing the service for the big screen and such, they can call in and let them know that, you know, things are going to have to be held up, or you can talk back. So now, obviously, a radio is simplex. It only talks or listens, as opposed to the intercom world, which is duplex, where you can talk and listen at the same time. But we use a control to engage the relay of a radio that hooks up into this FOR22. It's a handy device. Just to the right of it, there's an empty slot, and then to the right of that, there's a TEL14, which is a telephone interface. RTS users know this is like a TIF. And that allows you to take a POTS line and integrate it into your intercom system. It used to be very popular in the world of broadcast for co-ord lines to master control. So, you know, they'll, hey, we're going to take a break, a commercial in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, take it, master. And then when the master control was towards, when they were being finished with their commercial, they could count the truck or the studio back to their connection. In House of Worship, it was also used very extensively to connect sister campuses. So you may have a very large mega church, but it may be connected via regular old, you know, POTS lines, plain old telephone system lines, copper lines, to sister congregations, maybe in another part of the state or another part of the country, where they could coordinate their service. There's also, we also have in this instance, we show a GPI-6, which each of these matrix frames comes with GPIs and GPOs and relays, but you can add more with these cards. And off to the right is actually something that's been discontinued. It's an AES card. We've now that we have the IPA big card, that's sort of, you know, out of fashion. But anyway, I just want to give you that quick overview for that. On the far right, there's a door, and there are 2 power supplies in there. They're redundant power supplies, and they're seamless. Everything on this front panel on the Matrix, if you ever encounter it, everything on the front panel is hot swappable. I can pull out a card and put it back in and not break anything. The same thing with the power supplies. I can pull out one of the, I can't unfortunately on this picture open that door, but there are 2 power supplies in there. I could yank one out, and if that was the active one, the standby one would immediately seamlessly take over without any glitch, and I could replace the one I pulled out without any issues. So everything on the front of the Matrix is hot swappable. Nothing on the back of the Matrix is hot swappable. So I'll be showing you the back of a Matrix a little bit later. Anything there, a backplane card, all those things need to be, you need to pull the power to the Matrix to be able to play with any of those. So that's just a really quick overview of that.
Quick question,
yeah,
Rom.
go
back to that. Go back to the picture.
Okay.
Go back to the picture. At the beginning of the picture, you zoomed in on the upper left, and you said there were 2 slots there. There are actually 8 slots.
There are
right?
8 slots. 8 slots. There are 2. There were 2 populated slots on top and 2 populated slots on the bottom.
And those can be for like CCI 22s, FOR 22s, TEL 1s,
right?
And relays, right?
CCI 6, right? TEL 14. The CCI 22. Now you mentioned it. That's kind of like an SSA in RTS world, where it's a 2-wire to 4-wire converter, or for example, Gordon's boxes, he makes those really nice 2-wire to 4-wire boxes. This just slips right into the frame and is available to the backplane of the frame. Henry Cohn wants to know why I'm not wearing a Clearcom headset. That's a great question, Henry. Because I left it at the office. How is that? Does that okay, hopefully that answers your question. Carlos asks, is it possible for a client using a party line intercom system to start using Agent IC without having a matrix? Well, here's the deal, and we're going to talk more about Agent IC later, but I'm just going to dive into this since my ADHD is quite pronounced and I jump around a lot. Agent IC is a free download from wherever you get your apps, and when you open it up, there's a demo. And that demo is fully functional. And if you have downloaded it now, you can talk amongst yourselves. You find the party line, you swipe from the left across to latch the listen, and you push the button or swipe it towards the middle to latch the talk, and you can use it as an intercom right out of the box. However, it's attached to nothing. The demo happens to be attached to machines in Carlsbad, California. And if you want to use it for a show, okay, but some guy in Germany might be doing a demo while you're doing your show and step all over you. So the monetary part of Agent IC is where you buy client rights, and it's a license that allows you to attach it either to an LQ box, and anything that LQ box attaches to, and we've spoken about this before in earlier webinars, anything that LQ box attaches to, whether it's Clearcom equipment, RTS equipment, Riedel equipment, anybody's stuff, that anything that it's attached to is now available to those clients. In the case, Agent IC, in the case of the Matrix, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but just a quick overview, anything that I can put on a panel or put on a FreeSpeak belt pack that's on the backplane of that Matrix is now available for Agent IC, and we'll see how that works in a little bit. Peter Mason is asking, are POTS lines for coordination disappearing? If so, what is used to replace them? VoIP? Well, that's a great question. So the answer to your question is kind of. Okay, so there was a big movement for a long time for people to desperately hold on to their POTS lines. The thing about POTS lines, a plain old telephone system. POTS lines, the copper analog phone lines that we all used to have, they come with voltage. So if you have a telephone in your house, one of those old-fashioned, lowest lane phones, it not only gets the audio and can not only signal to dial out, but it also gets its power from that POTS lines. So I live in California. We have earthquakes from time to time, and sometimes the power will go out, or we may have a fire that'll take a power line out, or people who live in hurricane areas, the power goes down. But more often than not, the telephone lines stay up, and that phone will still work, whereas your VoIP line will not. So for a long time, people were clutching onto their POTS lines. I will tell you this. The truth is that the POTS lines are now interconnected between company offices with VoIP communication. So the fact that most of the telecom companies have very reliable, uninterruptible power sources, there does run a chance that that indestructible POTS line may become destructed. So people are starting to move now towards VoIP. They're becoming more comfortable. VoIP is becoming more reliable. Bandwidth is expanding, so people are, pretty happy about that. I would say we're in a time of transition right now.
Yeah, and
yes,
I work in a facility where we simulate POTS lines. The whole building is VoIP, but they
Right.
simulate POTS lines through an adapter, and we still do use those lines that are still hooked up to TIF ports,
right,
as both IFBs and cord lines.
Yes. Yes, very good. Mac, you're correct. However, I will say this, not every, and they're called fax emulators, not every one of those fax emulators, they're not all created equally. Some of them
Correct.
are really not compatible for TIFs or TEL-14s. They're not reliable. Now in modern times, they're much more reliable than they were, but why bother spending a copper line when you already have an internet connection?
Right.
So like I say, that transition is happening. And, that's that of the many things that are in communications, that's just another one of our changes that we're facing, just like what COVID is doing to all of us now. All right, so just going to step through a little bit here, talk about some of the other frames that we have. This one here that you're looking at, it's 1RU, it's called a Pico. it's coming to its end of life. It's a 32 port, full port duplex with RS422 data, and we had 4 more just 4-wire ports for a total of 36 ports. It's in one rack unit, but it's completely analog, and it has no interaction with anything network connected. However, people use LQ to interconnect their systems over network connections or internet connections. But that will be going away shortly. Within the next year or so, I believe there'll be a replacement for that. The smallest, what we call large frame matrix, is what we call the Delta, and I actually have one here. We're going to be playing with that in a little bit. It has, it still has the 2 CPU cards, those 2, but in order to save room, this was originally designed for what the company calls OB vans, what we call TV trucks. It was designed for spaces that don't have a lot of rack real estate. So instead of having 6 RU like the larger Omega or median frame, it goes down to 3 rack unit size. We put these large cards horizontally so that it'll fit that form factor. We do add, here you see there are 3 slots for the interface cards, in this case an FOR22 on the bottom, a CCI22 in the middle, and a TEL14 up top. Very top over here we have the 2 CPU cards. Typically the one that's in slot 2 is the one that's active, and the one that's in slot 1 is a standby card. People often ask, well, why is that the case? Well, I can demonstrate here on the large matrix. You'll see on this median. You remember I said that the power, whoops, let me come out a little bit there. The power supply is on the right-hand side here. So the power rails goes from, as you're looking at it, from the right side to the left side. And a few nanoseconds before the farthest CPU card in slot 1 gets power, the slot 2 card gets its power. So it's the first one to start. And that's the reason why that is. If you would pull out this second slot card, it would fail over to the first slot card, and then after the matrix resets, everything would come back to normal. The standby card is always polling the active card for its configuration, and all that stuff. The IP address used to reside on that. Now the IP address is actually integrated into the backplane of the matrix on a dongle. So that information stays. It's changeable, but it doesn't have to query the CPU card for that. All right, that's a little bit of minutia that we probably don't need. In the Delta, let me slide over a little bit. The power supply is here, and the same thing. The power starts flowing from the bottom up towards the top. Now, one of the things we like to do with matrices, either this one or the large form factor ones, is put, let me roll back up to the median again. We like to put the large power consuming cards like the IPA card, the EQ card, the MADI card. We like to put those cards on this right-hand side because they're closest to power rail, and the MVX cards, which don't really draw a lot of power, we put off to the left. And that's the reason why we usually specify that. Sometimes you may see a matrix configured where the high-powered cards are towards the left. One of us might come in and say, well, let's reconfigure it, because it's always best practice to have the high-powered cards, high-powered draw cards on the right-hand side closest to the power supply. And in the case of the Delta, that would be on the bottom. Okay, now, so this is the Delta. This is a removable fan and power supply module. And like I said before, we had these interface cards over here. You'll notice on the front there's a little RJ45 jack. A lot of people ask me what that is. It's labeled, well, quantized here, but it says LAN/panel. what this is really, it's just a simple pass-through. There's a piece of Cat5 cable that goes from this RJ45 connector to the back plane where there's another RJ45 connector that's connected pin to pin. So if I wanted to, I could take, let's say, a matrix port and plug it in there, and that could be my test port. So I could take a panel on my bench and plug it into the front of the matrix without having to go to the back of the rack. Or I could, if I wanted to, pass through a network connection from my switch, because many switches have the actual sockets of the switch facing the back of the rack, not the front. So I could take a spare port from my switch, plug it into the back of this this Delta, and then bring it out here. And now I have an extra port to my switch right here on the matrix. It's whatever you want it to be. It's totally configurable. It's just hardware. Okay. Okay, so we talked about the median. This is the median. Again, it has 7 card slots, 2 CPU cards, and it has 8 of the slots for the interface cards. They come blank, but you can configure them any way you want to. Okay, I see there's a question here from Mr. Guftason. Excuse me for mispronouncing your name. Hi, if possible, tell us some news on the replacement for the Pico. It could be usable when working a remote production control room on a remote site, but all other DSP equipment is placed in the main data center. Okay, and are there main, and so are the main intercom systems. So as far as the replacement for the Pico, that's really a little bit of a different conversation. I'm an engineer, not a sales guy, and Clearcom is, likes to play the cards close to the chest, understandably so, about what's coming down the line. But there have been, already people have started talking about a new product that will replace it, that will also incorporate some other products into one rack unit. That's probably, you know, nobody really knows a date for that yet, but probably before next year, we're hoping to see that enter the marketplace, maybe going into beta towards the end of the year or early in the year. But as far as specifics are concerned, I've already said more than I should in that regard. The Pico is still, as far as I know, available. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it has not yet ended of life. It happens to be a really cool product. It's just only analog, and the world is moving towards matrix now. So at some point, you'll hear more about that. I'd say, you know, stay tuned to the Clearcom website, and that product will make its way into the marketplace sometime in the not too distant future. The other matrix we have is our largest matrix. We call it an Omega. Again, it has the 2 CPU cards, and in this case, we see 15 blank plates here, just lenses, but it has 15. So this gives us the most bang for our buck. Now, in this median and also in the Delta, we saw we had these interface cards right on the matrix frame. Obviously, the Omega, giving you this gigantic amount of card slot space, does not have the room for that. We do make interface racks for those interface cards that you can outboard. And typically we see that right underneath it. So the IMF 3, which gives you 11 slots for those interface cards. And there's also the, I think we still make the IMF 102, which is 2. We'll see that in a minute. Okay. Now I want to talk a little bit about the cards that we're going to see in these matrices. Any questions so far? Just make sure you slam it up there and let us know what you want to talk about, because really this is going to be driven by you. We will be talking about other stuff shortly, the FreeSpeak and the Agent IC, but I do want to just give a quick overview, because a lot of people out there are just now putting their toes in the water of Eclipse matrices. So different kind of cards we make. So on the left here, you see there's a Dante card, gives us up to 64 Dante ports, and it's 64 duplex Dante ports. They're not stereo left-right, they are in and out. So I can have an outbound Dante that goes, let's say, to a stage announce or a voice of God in a certain dressing room, and another Dante port that goes to a, maybe a 70-volt system in another dressing room, or can go into the audio console that can be brought up into the entire PA for the house. And I can also have inputs. So let's say I have, I'm building my mix minuses for IFBs in my audio console. Instead of having to run individual analog lines to the matrix, I can spit out a whole bunch of those mix minuses onto the Dante stream and pick them up on this Dante card. Now they're available to anything that is touching the matrix. To the right of that, we show an EFIB. It's a fiber card, and this allows us to connect to trunk, actually, we call it trunking, to connect matrix frames together. EHX is capable of supporting up to 64 matrix frames in one ring. So, for example, I think Chinese television, if I'm not mistaken, has somewhere 40, 50, 60 matrices on a good day when all their TV trucks are plugged in and all that, and all the stations are connected. They're all connected together either through fiber or through other schemes, and I can see every single one of them from my software and control every single matrix from my software. Trunking is achieved by sending audio pathways back and forth between the matrices. All the control operations are achieved by the network interface between the matrices. So obviously all these matrices have to be on a shared network, and all the audio is passing through either a fiber trunk or some other trunks that we'll talk about in a minute. By the way, you can use Dante to trunk between matrices. If I have two matrices that share the same Dante network, I can use the Dante ports, some of those 64 ports, to actually trunk between my systems. Okay, I'm going to assume everybody knows what trunking is. For the few who don't, just a really brief cliff notes is, if you can imagine, I have resources on my matrix, and there are resources on the other matrix, and each of them are an island. They're not connected. But let's say I do connect them in some fashion with fiber or Dante or IP connections, or even analog connections if they're close enough. When I push a button on my panel to talk to the director in the other matrix's studio, it's called intelligent trunking. Once I've trunked these two systems together, when I push that button, first of all, the other matrix's resources are now available to my matrix, so I can program on my panel a button from the other matrix's resources. When I push the button on my panel to talk to the other panel in the other matrix's domain, the network connection sends a command from my matrix to the other matrix to open up a channel from me, or open up a connection from me to the desired endpoint. The desired endpoint then sees my name flash on his or her screen, and we can interconnect to each other. If I had 4 trunks between my two matrices, 4 conversations could happen simultaneously. The 5th conversation would get a busy signal. There's not enough trunks for that 5th conversation. Additionally, I should also mention that a party line takes up a permanent trunk, because a party line is constantly talking and constantly listening to and from the 2 matrices, or the 12 matrices, depending upon how you have it configured. So that ties up a trunk. So if I have one party line that's common between 2 matrices, but I have 3 what we'll call dynamic trunks, when I push the button, and when Pete pushes the button to talk to somebody, and when Mac pushes the button to talk to somebody, now all 4 of the trunks are tied up, 1 from the party line and 3 from our conversation. As soon as I take my finger off the button to talk or unlatch my talk, now For example, we can get Kelly can talk to somebody on the other side. Now that trunk has become available. It's the old telephone system is basically what we're talking about here. Just to finish up with the fiber ring will allow us to connect fiber between two systems, and I can also do a redundant loop back. So if any fiber gets cut, the redundant fiber will immediately and seamlessly take over. And I can make a ring. If I have several matrices, I can make a ring that loops back to the first one. Okay, now, we also have, this is actually our newest card. Here we go. Oleg is asking, and don't have to be sorry, Oleg, it's okay. Is trunking part of a CPU card? Absolutely. All that interaction with the trunking happens from the card that's facilitating the trunking through the CPU card into the network to the sister matrix and in reverse. So sister matrix in through the CPU card and then back and forth to the supportive cards on the matrix. Mark is asking, is the software capable to control offline the matrix, or is it just simple GUI like FreeSpeak? So EHX is a proprietary piece of software that is offline configurable. However, there are pieces that need to be connected for you to see them in order to manipulate things. And we'll see that in a little bit when we start talking about connecting the IP FreeSpeak II transceivers. You have to see them on the network to completely configure them. But it's not like FreeSpeak II or HelixNet where you have to be connected to a live frame to talk. And by the way, and I'll mention this again, you'll all get my email address at some point in this little webinar. Certainly at the end, if you want to, you can write it down now. Rom, that's R-O-M, like Mike, at clearcom, CLEARCOM.com. If you email me, I can get you a link to download the software, the EHX software, so you can play with this stuff as we get into it. And we're going to get into it in a little bit, and you'll see how it works. Most of it is configurable offline. I will say a couple of things here as I'm introducing this, and I'll repeat it again later. The software must be compatible with the hardware. So if you have a version 11.1 EHX software and you try to connect it to a version 10.1D matrix, it won't work. It has to be compatible. What we're giving you this, we typically sell this software. It's not free of charge, but for you today, besides the Ginsu knives, we will be able to send you a link for this. But keep in mind, it's not for every matrix, and it's not for you to give away to other people. This is because you've participated in this, and we want to encourage you to be able to be sharp enough when, this crap is not going to last forever. We're going back to work, ladies and gentlemen. And when you do, and when you get on site and have to play with an Eclipse matrix, we want you to be familiar with it. So it's our gift to you, but please keep it to yourself when you get this. And I'm happy to send it to any and all of you. It may take a little bit because I have a feeling I'm going to get a lot of requests. Okay, so that's that part. Now, just for clarification, Mark Kennedy asks, hi Mark, just for clarification, does the A1 build the mix minus and make it available to Dante, or does the comms person build the matrix? Okay, so good question, Mark. The actual physical mix minus is built in the audio console, okay? It could be something as simple as just program audio coming out of a DA. Typically, we don't do that for IFBs, but it could be. However, typically the A1 will build a mix, doesn't have to be minus, but a mix, an aux mix or a matrix mix in the console that the talent wants to hear in their ear. It is then directed to the talent through the Eclipse matrix frame, and we'll see how that works once we start playing with the EHX, which, trust me, I will eventually get to. I just want to get through some hardware questions here. Okay, and Oleg is saying, I mean the CPU card and the trunking card is the same card. Not really. Okay, not really. Okay, I'm seeing I'm already getting people asking for the software. That's great. Okay, thanks, Palmer.
I think the distinction is that you can have a couple of different kind of trunking cards. You could
Right.
trunk analog, you could trunk Dante, you can trunk whatever kind of card you want to put in there. And when I've used it, I've taken a 64 port Dante card and taken 32 ports and just grouped them together and connected them to another thing, and bang, that's all the trunking program you have to do.
Right.
Then all the rest of the Dante's left over for me to use as Dante.
Right. Now, the actual traffic control is happening through the CPU card, but the physical trunk is going through the card that you're trunking with. So it's kind of a hybrid, a matrix of the devices. I hope that answers your question, Oleg. If it didn't, ping us again, and I'll try to clarify. But just to review, the hardware trunking, let's say I'm using a fiber trunk. I'm going from fiber card to fiber card. The physical piece of fiber is the trunk. However, all the magic of, hey, I want this guy to go to that panel, and I want this IFB to hear that source, and they may be on different matrices. All that traffic control is routed through the CPU card. The actual audio is passing through the card that is providing the trunks. So hopefully, Oleg, maybe that made sense to you. Okay, if not, please ping us back. Anyway, getting back to the IPA card, finally. So the IPA card is now available. It has, as you can see here on the right-hand side, it has several different LANs. It has 4 LAN connections, and it also has these 2 sync in and sync out, which will become available shortly. It's not quite ready yet. That'll be a firmware change. And I also have some SFP cages that I can use for my LANs. Okay. There's also a USB-C connector here that I can use for upgrading the card if I need to upgrade it directly. However, typically, I'm sorry, these are such low resolution. Typically, it just goes through the software, through the matrix, into the card, and we don't have to bother with this. This was kind of for early adopters before we really sorted out our upgrade system. The front of the card will show you how many ports have been allocated and some other metrics on LAN connections and power health. Now, this card can do a bunch of different things. It comes out of the box with 16 ports. You can buy upgrade. You can buy upgrades in 16 port chunks up to 64 ports. So if you've got a big system, you may want a lot of ports, and you can have a couple of these in your system if you want. 128 ports on just 2 cards. It has 4 NICs, but we can use these. They can be either copper or fiber. It has really 2 pieces of functionality to it. One is what we call IVC, which is IV Core. It's our proprietary VoIP system, and also has an admin system, so it can talk to the CPU card and all the traffic can be routed as it needs to be routed. The IVC connectivity is for things like our panels, which would allow you to connect of our V panel, which is one of our newer panels, using a network connection. And keep in mind, and we'll show you how to do this later, if you open up an external IP address on this card to the public internet, open up port 6001 UDP TCP, then it can be on the public internet, and I can take my panel home with me and plug it into a DSL that I have in my home. Anything faster than dial-up, really. And a lot of television stations and television shows are doing that now. They're sending their graphics people home with a panel or with an Agent IC client, which kind of works the same way. And they're able to use their connection, because it's on the public internet, to be able to connect back to the station or other operators who are working out of their home. Again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. So I can have my V-Series panel can plug in via IVC. However, I can also piggyback on back of that, and I know you're drinking from a fire hose here, but just bear with me. We'll see all this stuff in a little bit. You can also piggyback 2 more virtual 4-wire ports off of the DB25 that's on the back of that panel. So I can have my panel, plus I can also have program audio, an IFB in an IFB outbound, and maybe a mic line level. It has to be brought to line level mic inbound, so I can have talent. Let's say if I'm I don't know, I'm doing the Colbert show at home, a late night show, whatever he calls it. He can have his mic and his IFB going in to the panel, and it goes back to the station master control through that, while the producer is sitting on the panel and using the panel as just a panel. So you can piggyback up to 2 of those virtual 4-wire ports on the back of the panel with the IVC. You can also do it with AES-67. We'll talk about it in a minute. The IVC side of the IPA card can also connect to an LQ box. So, you know, a lot of us have worked with LQ to interconnect HelixNet or FreeSpeak or other systems across a building or across a town or a country or across the world. You can connect to an LQ box from one of these ports on your IPA card, and it doesn't add anything to the box count. There's a limit of 6 LQ boxes that you can have in a ring, but you can add many more ports from your IVC connectivity of your IPA card into that link. Okay, let's see. I think Oleg is trying to add something. No. Oh, it's not. It's Mr. Gustafson. Trunking. Is it okay to set up trunks between IPA card and IVC card? No, I'm sorry. It has to be the same type of card. Dante to Dante, IVC to IVC, and fiber to fiber. I can't imagine a scenario when you're able to use a Dante network to connect into a IVC network for no other reason that the IVC can use all 7 layers and the Dante can only use like 2 or 3. So that's, yeah, unfortunately, you can't do that. Nice idea, but the laws of physics are working against us on that. SIP, I can connect SIP. My office phone can be connected to a button on my panel. You can imagine all the productivity that you can get out of that. Agent IC clients. So, you know, at the beginning, we were talking about Agent IC on your phone to turn your phone into an intercom panel. Again, we're going to show you how that's done in a little bit. So of the 64 ports that could possibly live on the card, these are the things that you can have. And additionally, you can have IP trunks and IP directs. I can direct connect things between IP cards, or I can do intelligent trunking like we did with the Dante, the MADI card. We also make a MADI card that can do that, and the IPA. Okay, and again, IPA card have an IVC port. Yes. So here's the thing about the Did we even show an Let me show the IVC really quickly before I answer that question, and I'll get back to the IPA card. So the IVC card, as the LMC card, and as the EQ card, which do we even have an EQ card here? Yeah, there we go. All those cards are actually, they're the exact same card. They just have different firmware. And in the case of the IVC32 card, they also have an additional license that's added in the factory that allows them to have a network connection. The EQ card started out life as a FreeSpeak II or even FreeSpeak I, the old FreeSpeak, which in America we used to call Cellcom. That's how we could connect to it. It would have, if you could look over here on the right-hand side here, that's the back of the EQ card and all of its derivations. So the EQ card, the IVC32 card, the EQ T1, the EQ FreeSpeak, the EQ FreeSpeak splitter, and the IVC32 all looked the exact same on the back plane. Actually, the cards look the same too. It's just firmware that separates them. On the top, there's a LAN connection. That's only for the IVC32 card. The IVC32 card gives you 32 ports that connect into that LAN connection. They're virtual ports, either for virtual hard ports or virtual soft ports. And by that, I mean virtual hard port would be to connect a panel over the network, as we were talking about before, where I can take my V panel, put it on my kitchen table and be connected to the station, or soft ports like Agent IC, like Concert, which is another product we used to make, but we see very little of today. I also have reference in and out for DECT. That would be for DECT syncing systems. And on this card, I also have 8 transceiver ports. Again, keep in mind, this card was emulated, used to emulate, and still does, what a FreeSpeak II base station does. So in this case, it would have 8 transceiver ports. The FreeSpeak base station only has 2, and you have to buy splitters to get the 10. This one has 8 ports. However, you can configure it to be what we call a splitter port, in which case the first port and the 5th port could be connected to splitters. So instead of having 8 ports, you'd have 10 ports. All right, so that's what that is. Now, getting back to the IPA card, really quickly, just to show you, the E1T1, I don't think any of you are ever going to use. They use this a lot in finance. It's to interconnect or trunk using the E1 protocol or T1 protocol, which are telecom protocols for multi-channel connectivity on a single wire, on a network connection. The eMADI card is just that. It gives you up to 64 MADI ports. Before Dante exploded into our world, a lot of people were using MADI, and the MADI can be connected either with fiber. I'm sorry, with with fiber or with BNC connections with video cable. And obviously, there's also a clock input. So you could put your word clock in there or your blackburst. The MVX card is the first card that we talked about. And again, apologies for jumping around. I will get back to the IPA card in just a second. But while I'm here, this is the very first card we ever put out for the Matrix. It has 16 analog ports. They're 4-wire ports with RS-422 data that allows signaling to go back and forth to and from the Matrix from endpoints. So if I have a analog connected a panel, and I push a button that says Joe, Joe is going to see on his or her panel the ROM flashing. So the routing and the flashing of the names is all RS-422 data. The audio is coming on the middle pairs, the blue and the green pair, and that RJ45 connection, which is pure analog 4-wire audio in and out. And you get 16 ports of those. Okay. LMC64 is a way to connect a product that we make that's called Dynam EC, or it used to be called Production Maestro. It's a GUI that works alongside EHX that allows you to do some real-time changes of party lines, IFB sources, destinations, things like that, and can change volumes. It's very dynamic, hence the name, and it happens in real time. You don't have to do an apply change. This LMC64 allows you to do very accurate metering of within the Dynamic software, so you can actually monitor all the meters, all the party lines, IFBs, etc., in real time with highly accurate metering. The
Rom,
yes,
Rom,
yes, sir.
if I'm not mistaken, unlike any other metering system, this meters outputs as well as inputs, correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that. And it will do that on a variety of scales. You want to look at it on a Nordic scale, fine. You want PPM, great. VU, whatever you want. We got whitefish, we got lox, we got smoked meat. It's all there. It's ragu, it's in there. It's a pretty powerful tool. it's incredible how arduous it is to actually do that process. You know, we all get to do that, and you could certainly look at one channel just using the sound card on your computer. But when you want to view all 64 of those channels accurately through one device, it takes a lot of horsepower to do that. And this card is actually very much so one of those high power draw cards just because of that. On the shelf. Can you close that door, Avi? It's blinding me. Thanks.
You can do metering without the card, but you can only do it with one analog port.
Yes, that's correct. That's
Right.
correct. You're absolutely correct. And you can choose which one you want to do it with, but it's arduous. And you can listen to it also with your sound card. It's just arduous. This makes it, I mean, there are facilities that use this, I mean, literally life and death situations, what we call public safety facilities, 911 centers, where they're actually recording these things and they want good metering so they can record properly, or very large NOCs, network operating centers that are distributing hundreds of IFBs across tens of different stations and OB-van facilities, and they need accurate metering. So for them, you know, the $10,000 for that card is more than worth it. For us in our world, we very rarely see it. Okay, but it's available. Getting back to the IPA card and getting back specifically to Mr. Gustafson's question about IPA card have IVC ports, yes. So I can configure a virtual port. Again, remember, these are not ports, they're network connections. They're 4 separate NICs. I can configure my first NIC as just my administration stuff so that I can use it to communicate with the CPU card, which actually it does on the backplane, but that way I can see what's going on when I look at it on my software. I can configure another NIC just to be the IVC32 connected stuff that may be going out on a static public IP address that's not even in my switch. I can connect that NIC just for that. I can connect yet another NIC for an AES67 stream, and that's the next part of the conversation about the IPA card, and is actually very important about the rest of our conversation today once we start talking about the FreeSpeak II in the matrix. We're using an AES67 stream to connect to the transceivers, as opposed to what we were doing heretofore on the base station and with the EQ card in the matrix. We used to have direct connects from the base station or the splitter or the back EQ card or splitter to the transceiver. Now, with this new scheme, because we're using a new codec that reduces the management stress, we're now able to have, instead of 5 belt packs per transceiver, we can now have 10 belt packs per transceiver. The transceiver is not the same. It's a different transceiver, and you'll see it in a bit. But the belt packs are the same as we've always used. And because it's a network connection, I don't need home runs anymore from my base station or my EQ card. Now I take that NIC, that third NIC in this case that I've configured, put it into an AES67 switch, and anywhere that AES67 switch can get to, as long as it stays within 3 hops, because it EOLs around 3, I can connect a transceiver to that, either via copper or via fiber. So a lot of that's a big game changer for us. Okay, I'm just looking and seeing if there, okay, Mr. Pete Erskine, I know that guy. Can MVX A16s do trunking with null cables? So yes, what we do is we make a trunking turnaround cable. Again, we're only using the audio when we trunk. We don't really care about the outside pairs. So the brown pair and the orange pair are kind of superfluous here. but the blue pair and the green pair, do people still see my camera, or are you only looking at my screen?
We got your camera.
Yeah, we
got
got
your
Got my
camera.
camera too. Okay, so in the 568B wiring, we have 6 wires, right? There's a brown pair, a green pair, a blue pair, and an orange pair. My fingers don't really work there, right? So the brown pair and the orange pair are for RS422 data, typically on an MVX card, not typically, always. However, when we're doing trunking, we're only doing audio. So the blue pair is from the frame, from the MVX card. The green pair is into the MVX card or into the matrix. I like to think of it as blue boy because that would be like a male XLR, green girl because the female XLR takes the input. Okay, so when I use my MVX cards to trunk between 2 matrices, I make an audio turnaround cable that takes the blue pair and flips it with the green pair. So at one end, it looks like 568B wiring with the blue pair in the middle on 4 and 5, and the green pair on either side of it on 3 and 6. And at the other end of that cable, it's the other way around. So now the green pair is on 4 and 5, and the blue pair is on 3 and 6. It's just the old audio adage, Gazinta had to goes into Gazauda, and Gazauda has to go into Gazinta. You can't have the output go to the output. If I had a straight through cable, my blue output pair would be going to the output pair on the other matrix, so it can't trunk. As soon as I flip those wires, obviously in FreeSpeak and LQ, now we can actually do that in the software. But for these more, shall we say, mature products like HelixNet and the MVX card, we can't do that. So you have to physically make an audio turnaround cable, as you said, a null cable. Okay, Sean Hall. Hi, Rom. Thanks for the excellent webinar. You have great taste. Oh, thus far, I see the disclaimer. Very good, smart. I've used Agent IC to great effect at IBM Think last year. I think as well as a handful of similar shows, and I'm pleased to see how its integrative system will make connectivity even more robust, especially Dante integration. I've been running Ableton on my laptop to monitor mic feeds. Oh, okay. As an A2, but the headphone shuffle has become, of course, an annoyance. Absolutely. Can you please repeat the email address? I would like to request the software. Thanks again. Absolutely. Local 16, my fave. Okay. It's ROM, that's me, at clearcom.com. ROM at CLEARCOM.com. And we'll put it up again at the end of the show. Okay. Thanks for that, Sean. That was very nice. I love the taps on the back. I also like the critiques, by the way. If you have something that I'm not covering or you don't like the way I'm doing something, please chime in or email me later because, you know, we're all learning as we do these things. I can't tell you how weird it is to be effectively, I don't want this to sound wrong, but teaching a class looking at my kitchen table and not seeing feedback immediately from faces, you know, who's got droopy eyes, who looks like they get what I'm getting, who's got a question mark on their face. I can't see that. So these questions are how we can interact better. Don't be bashful. Okay, so getting back to this AES 67 side of the IPA card. It also supports iris panels. That's not going to be our focus today, but we do make a panel, one of our V panels, that's our newest one called Iris. It has colored OLEDs, really pretty. It also can connect every way these panels can connect, either analog or IVC32 network, but it can also connect on an AES67 network. Why is that cool? AES67, because it doesn't have to go through the entire network and unbox the entire network at the other end. It's just like Dante is. Dante is very similar to AES67. It uses a lot of that protocol. It is super fast, very low latency. So if I connect this panel to an analog connection, when someone talks to me, I hear it immediately. It's analog. It's moving at the speed of light. If I connect this panel with IVC connectivity, depending upon the health and quality of the network connection that I have, and especially once I'm going over the public internet where God knows what the heck is going on, that connectivity can be pretty latent. And I might have to like change money by the time I hear the cue that somebody's trying to give me. So in order to facilitate quick network connectivity, we came out with the Iris panel that's using this AES67 network that's available now on the IPA card, wasn't available before on the IVC32, and it can give us that really fast connection. I'm getting a lot of emails right now. I'm sure a lot of them are from some of you. The questions are where I'm looking. I'll look at the emails later. I promise to answer all of them. By the way, I was talking before about that connection on the back of the panel where you can actually pull out some extra channels if you network connect. Right now, this has got an analog connection to it. I'm imagining you can all see this. There is an Ethernet connection here, and this connection I would plug into a network. If I've configured the panel correctly, it would handshake with the IVC portion of that IPA card or IVC32 card, and I have a network connection between the two. But because that network connection has a little extra data on it that we're not using, we can add on, we can't do this with the analog, but we can do it with this one. We can do some other things with the analog. I can take this and plug this little, I mean, you can make a nice one, but this is a little $4.50 doodad. You can get it on Amazon. And I can connect this, oops, upside down. Oh, I have to take these things off. Well, never mind. It's got the doodads on it. Anyway, I can connect this and then use this Phoenix connector to connect 4-wire audio, analog 4-wire audio. This panel will convert it from VoIP to analog line level audio in and out. And it does that for 2 channels, for 2 separate discrete duplex channels. Okay, I'm getting away from myself here. That's the Iris. We also can support up to 64 of these transceivers. You may notice, for those of you who are familiar with the FreeSpeak II transceivers, this is a little bit bigger. Okay, my head's not that small. This is what we call, it's called an IPA, IPT, the IP transceiver. The card is the IPA, the transceiver is the IPT, and it connects not to the base station or the card itself physically. It connects to the network. And since I'm using a switch here that's got PoE, it can actually power it. Not only can it power it, but what I could do is I could, here I have this guy here. And again, I know I'm jumping around a bit, but it'll all make sense when it comes together, if you can survive this. Okay, so this one is also connected to the switch there. But I could, if I wanted to, put an SFP in there and fiber to another one. I'd have to
you can momentarily unshare, and so we can see a full screen view of your camera.
Okay, that's probably a very good idea. Let me come
Just
over
to square
here.
the stop button, right?
Hit the stop button. There you go. Okay, so this is the IPT. As you can see, it's bigger than the ones we're used to. The other ones are about that big. This is a little bit bigger. It's actually, it's also rated for outdoor use. It does have, by the way, though, it has a fan for if it gets too hot, a fan will kick in, and there's a little filter here. So if you're pressure washing your system like they do at Disneyland, just don't shoot it up that way, okay? But it's rated pretty well for outdoor use. So I came in here copper, but I could, if I wanted to, come and put an SFP here. I'm assuming everybody knows what an SFP is. Small form factor pluggable. This one happens to be, it's got a little blue dingy-dangy on it, so that means what? It is single mode. I can plop this in here, and I actually have 2 slots there. I could fiber in and then loop daisy chain out. Again, if I use fiber, I have to use the power supply that comes with it's got a little 12-volt brick with a mini DIN connector.
How many antennas can be powered by that brick if they're looped Cat5 off of that?
At this point in the firmware, I don't believe you can loop Cat5 them. I don't believe that's possible. I think you can only go. I could be wrong here. I'm at a loss.
Can you go
but
fiber into the first one and then do a Cat5 into
Yes.
the next one and
Yeah,
the next
yeah.
one? And
And
the power
back
supply
and
should
forth,
power
back
2 or
and
3
forth.
of them, right?
2 or 3. Keeping in mind, though, that's considered a hop.
Oh, really? Okay.
We don't recommend more than 3 hops. So I'm going from the card to the switch, and then from the switch, I might be going to another switch, right? So you got to do the math, okay? I can tell you this, firmware is constantly being worked on. I can't tell you exactly what because I don't know, but firmware is being worked on, and I don't know what cool new features will come out, but maybe at some point in time, things will work out so you can hop more, or you can have easier connectivity. I know that they made these 2 connectors for a reason. I just don't know yet what they're for. So I have never daisy chained copper to copper. I have daisy chained copper to fiber. And I have not, but I have been told that you can then do the reverse again. But that's a direct connect. And that's stretching your 3 hops. Also, you'll notice, by the way, there are some buttons, some LEDs here. We'll talk about that in a little bit when we actually make the connection. And there's a little button here that we're going to find very handy once we do our deep dive into this. Okay, so that's the IPT that connects for our FreeSpeak belt pack. And the belt pack, it's exact same. Well, let me take it off this little mount. The belt pack's the same belt pack you're used to. No difference there. Yeah. Okay, I see there are a couple of other questions. Oh, there are a few questions. Let me get to the right ones here. Okay. Ben, can the IPA card send or receive direct AES-67 audio to the third-party audio? Okay, great question, Ben. The answer to your question is not today, but very, very soon. We are beta testing that now. The AES-67 connectivity component of this is probably very roll-outable right now, but version 12, which is the one that will incorporate it, I'm very sad to see version 11 go away because of my inner spinal tap, but we will be going to version 12 hopefully within the next couple of months, and that version 12 will have AES-67 connectivity for other products, and we've connected things. My buddy Jonathan Sorensen, who's my equivalent in Michigan, or one of my equivalents in Michigan, we have a couple of guys there, Mitch is also there, did a test at Disneyland with a Bolero and a Delta frame doing AES-67 connectivity. So we can connect there. We've connected with Calrec. We've connected with Lavo. We're working with camera manufacturers to connect AES-67 streams for camera CCUs. That 2110 protocol that is used in this regard is kind of in its, I wouldn't say infancy, but toddlerhood, and it's kind of in its terrible twos right now. So everybody is still doing a dance to try to figure out how it works. And we're very cautious about putting it into a marketplace because there are a lot of people who are not conforming to the standards completely. So we're constantly challenged by tweaking the firmware so it'll work with other products. But it's coming, and it's very close. And I can say with some confidence, don't hold me to it, but I'm pretty sure if you had a facility right now that had to have that function, we could get you a copy of that for your Eclipse. But that's a different conversation that I think we'd be better off having that one offline, because I really don't like stepping on landmines like that. I may have already incurred the wrath of God knows who. Okay.
But you're good at it.
You know, I got some game. And, you know, I've been around long enough. I'm like the old guy who can, you know, fart in public. You know, whatever. What are they going to do? They know it's me. Okay, Mr. Gustafson, I'm butchering your name and I apologize. The new panel that connects with AES-67, have you tested how much network delay they can handle? Okay, here's the thing. It's not so much how much the panel can handle, it's how much network delay the AES-67 network can handle. And it ain't much. I mean, this is a PTP device. This is a network that has, I think, if I'm not mistaken, nanosecond tolerances. So delay in the network. Now, if you're talking about latency, I can say you're probably talking about maybe 2 to 5 milliseconds at the most, but that's because of other factors. But as far as the network has to be very, very locked. Anything that's using PTP has no tolerance for slippage. So again, I don't know if I'm answering your question that well, but I'm trying here. Maybe Peter or Mac or Kelly want to chime in on that? Do you know, is there something I'm missing here as far as the AES-67 network is concerned? Crickets.
I think what I read the question is, panels sometimes get upset if they don't have a quick response back from the frame. They don't react right. And in some panel software, there is an adjustment to adjust the wait time for the panel.
The network,
but network delay in AES-67 cannot have any network delay.
No, it's a non-factor in AES-67.
Right.
Yeah. That question is applicable to more legacy style networks than the AES-67 network. I understand the question, but you'll be happy to know that it has no tolerance, and therefore, if it works, it's happening now. Well, maybe more like now, but fast. But the AES-67 network will not function if it gets flummoxed at all. Even the slightest amount will just wreck it. That's just the way it is. And therefore, the AES-67 networks are built with a lot of cool scaffolding to maintain that intolerance for slippage. If I'm saying that correctly, I hope that's the right description for you. Denise! Yay! Denise Woodward, ladies and gentlemen. Awesome. Okay. Do the 4 NICs on the IPA card come pre-configured? No. Do we program the function in the NICs in the software? Yes, you do. We're going to get to that. I'm sorry. You know, you guys are drinking from a fire hose. A lot of you people are probably getting a little bit bored because you've worked with this stuff before. But we saw a lot of the population of the people who subscribed for this had very little Eclipse knowledge, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to combine the two groups together. Maybe it was not a good idea, but I'll get to it. I'll get to it soon. Trust me. Okay, Henry Cohen. Hey, baby. Is that 64 maximum FreeSpeak transceivers per IPA card or per matrix frame? I think, okay, so you're not sharing, I don't believe you share IPTs across IPAs. I think you put all your IPTs on, you know, all your FreeSpeak belt packs on a card, and then if you have other Iris stuff or other IVC sort of connectivity stuff, you get another card. That's the way I've always configured it. Assuming I'm correct, but I'm old and in the way, and I've been prone to misspeaking, so we'll look into that. Thanks for that question, Henry. unless you know the answer to it and you're just being coy. You guy, you. Daniel asks, when setting up trunks, oh, these trunk things got pretty popular today. When you're setting up trunks, you said it was between the same type, in other words, same type of card, yes. Does that still hold for the Dante card and the IPA card using AES-67? Absolutely. And the AES-67, I mean, the IPA card can trunk, it trunks with AES-67, or I'm assuming it might also be able to trunk both ways. I have to look into that. That's a great question. Let me note that. AES IVC trunk. That's a good question. I'm embarrassed I don't know the answer to it, but you know, I've come to become very accustomed to that kind of embarrassment. Well, question from Nigeria. Wow, hello. It's late for you. Okay, thank you. And thanks for tuning in. The PTP, Precision Time Protocol, very good, necessary or required for AES-67 connectivity to mitigate the latency in the network. So the PTP, as I understand it, that's the clock, and there are many schemes for how it works. The simple answer is it's a conductor. That's the downbeat, and the downbeat happens here. However, in an AES-67 network, the tolerance for any delta between when the downbeat happens and when it arrives at the end point, there's no tolerance effectively. So the PTP clock scheme is set up so that there's a grandmaster clock, and that grandmaster clock shoots back and forth between other boundary clocks or other other master clocks or transparent clocks, however the scheme works. There are a couple of different ways it works. And that, what it does is it calculates by the time it hits the endpoint is aware of the delta, the difference between T0 and when it receives the signal. So it can compensate for it. So there's no tolerance for any latency. The latency is made up. And one of the cool things, for example, about things like the 211030 is what I look at because it's audio. Video is somebody else's world. But in SDI, when you had a stream that went through, I know I'm diverging a little bit, but give me 40 seconds for this. SDI, you had that stream that had muxed the video, the audio, and the data. And it came out the other end. But if I was somewhere in the middle and I wanted to pull that, let's say just the audio out because I want to take one channel and manipulate it a little bit, I want to add some effect or EQ or whatever and put it back into the stream, now it was all out of sync. Couldn't do it. What went in had to be what came out. What 2110 is doing and some of its predecessors is it takes each of those individual streams, video, audio, and all the different audio, it could have many audio channels in there, the data and whatever other user crud goes in there, timing for commercials or whatever, it goes in, but I can pick it up any point along the way, work on it, spit it back, but because they're all clocked properly through Precision Time Protocol, when it gets to the other end, everybody over there is going to sit and wait till everybody comes through, and now we can all go. So, not quite sure if the Nigerian question was completely answered there, but that's the basics of this concept. Anybody else want to chime in? Totally willing to hear that. While I wait for that. James Henry, does the IPT still do the standalone site survey? Okay, yes, it does. We're going to walk through that. Thank you for asking that. And how does Eclipse frame receive PTP signal? So the PTP signal, you can have the IPA card be your master clock. If in this case, when I'm just using some couple of transceivers, I don't need to get a grandmaster. Once I start going in and doing a bunch of other stuff, plus talking with other AES things, and I'm in a bigger network, then I want to, on the network, not the matrix, the network, the card within the network, the IPA card within the network is a participant in that net. the network is administering, I guess is the best way I can put it, or overseeing or facilitating the precision time protocols crystal. Okay, I think that answers your question about how the Eclipse frame receives the PTP signal. So again, one of the constituents on the frame, which is the IPA card, would, if there was a PTP grandmaster clock within the network, would be receiving information from that card through the network. The network is administering the PTP transport. Hopefully that explains that. Okay, just getting back to, what PTP switch do you recommend for AS67 networks? So the PTP switch, the PTP switch, I don't know, you have PTP aware switches, but a grandmaster clock is really where the PTP is generated. Or in this case, if it's just small, the PTP can be generated within my IPA card. We like to use nice switches. I wouldn't go to Best Buy and buy a Joe Bob hub or switch for my AES67 network. There are a lot of people are very happy with the Luminex switches. I don't like, but I appreciate that a lot of people like DHCP, which the Luminex won't do. So maybe you want a different switch, an SG350 or 300 Cisco. A buddy of mine has been telling me about a Microtech, I think it's called, that he thinks might be a low-cost possibility for a switch that is what you need for the AES67 network is you need quality of service, IGMP snooping, querying. PTP aware is nice, but I don't think it's required. Yeah. Again, if I don't answer your question, chime back in. Does the IPT still, okay, so yes, going back to James Henry Brew, not really sure how that works, sorry. So yes, I can apply, by the way, keep in mind, anything that's AES67 connected does not connect quickly. There are all kinds of things that have to go back and forth, many handshakes, even in this world of COVID-19, they're allowed to do it. Okay, so I'm going to pull this, and obviously the power is now gone. I am going to, let me get rid of this SFP so you can see this a little bit easier. Okay, come on, baby. I don't want you to go in. Okay. Hopefully you can see that little button right there. Right there. Yep. Yep. Okay. And then LEDs on the either side of it. Right. Okay. So when I plug this in, and by the way, you'll notice, hopefully you can see it. I don't know if there's enough light here. It says LAN PoE and just LAN 2. You want the PoE one to go into the PoE one. So make sure you do that when you're using PoE. Otherwise, you would want to use the power connection. Watch what happens when I plug this in. I get to see some power happening there. See, you notice that it's going through a process. All the handshakes are starting and blah, blah, blah. And it could take 2, 3, 4 minutes, depending upon the network traffic. Okay. But I can still use this as a power source. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this button in just like I did on the other transceivers. And I'm only using this for power. I don't even care to connect to the network here. I'm only using it for power. Okay. And you see the blink, blink, blink. And wait till we start to see the white light come on. And is that it? That's a green light. There's a white light. Okay. Now I can let go. And it'll take a couple of minutes, but it will go into, now it won't go connect to the AES67 network. It'll go into its standalone mode for your site survey, just like you used to do with your transceiver, the E1 transceiver that you're using, either 1.9 or 2.4. By the way, these are 1.9, only 1.9. We don't make the IPT product in 2.4. And you cannot co-locate a IPT transceiver on an IPA card with a 1.9 transceiver using an EQ card on the same matrix. We've made it impossible. You can't do it. There's a way to trick it in case you wanted to use 2.4 connections, but it's not approved. We want you to either use this or the E1s. Again, remember, the codec that the belt pack uses, it's the same belt pack, but it uses a different codec. Instead of using 1 3/4 deck slots, of which there are only 12 per transceiver, it uses only 1 deck slot. So now I can have 10 transceivers. I have to leave 1 or 2 slots open for handoffs. I can have 10 belt packs on a transceiver instead of 5 that we used to have on the base. And because of that, the RF space at 1.9 is not as crowded with deck slots occupation. So instead of having only 25 belt packs in one contiguous RF space, I can now have 50 belt packs in one contiguous RF space in the United States of America, where we have that 10 megahertz bandwidth limitation. Okay, and you'll see here the blinky blinky like we used to see when we're in test mode, and now it's come up and now it's ready to be in test mode. And I can pair it, the belt pack, to this just as I did in my E1 transceiver. Pairing it to the test, it'll say test 125 or whatever it is. While I've got this out, I want you to notice something here. There's an MDMS address. Okay, it's the host name. It's effectively the serial number of the printed circuit board inside. It's an MDNS address. And let's see if this thing can even focus on that. I don't think it can. It's this one here. Give it a second to see if you can see that number. You see, it says YY CC transceiver, and it says 48XY 8454. Take it from me, it says that. Now, this is important to know, and we're going to see why in a little bit when we actually go and do this, set this up. Another thing I want to show you while I have this out, we're done with the test mode question, hopefully, and see if any other questions came up. Yep, okay, good. I'm going to do something different now. I happen to be running my EHX, my IVC32 for EHX, and as a separate NIC on my IPA card, and the admin is a separate NIC on the IPA card, and the AS67 is a separate NIC on the IPA card. Actually, I think I'm going to combine the admin and the IVC, but the AS67 is a separate NIC, and that NIC I'm actually using DHCP for, which I don't always recommend, but we're going to do it today because it's the quickest way to get us up. So this just came from somewhere. I don't know what they did. Maybe they made a static IP address. Maybe I'm going to use DHCP at least to get it there. I want to reset this to 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug it in and let it power up without pushing the button so that it comes up normally. And once it starts to really come up to me, right now it's not there. I'm just showing the green for the power, but pretty soon we'll start to see some other activity on the other LEDs. And when I start to see some activity that looks like it's actually giving me some good notes, and by the way, all this is in the manual, all these LEDs and such, which, by the way, all manuals, tech notes and such, all that stuff are available on the Clearcom website. Support dropdown. There's a whole place for downloads. We have in the support area something called Solution Finder. I highly recommend you acquaint yourself with Solution Finder. It's a fantastic resource. Type in any question. I want to connect my audio comm system to my my old Clearcom 2-wire. How do I do it? I want to connect my Riedel Bolero wireless system to a Helix net. How do I do it? I'm seeing such and such an error message. What does it mean? All that information is there. It's very handy, and I suggest it. Ryan, very good. Okay, can I give any insight to the connection type for Edge? Okay, Edge is not out yet. We've seen it in beta. We've seen it at trade shows. It's not out yet. Edge is, this is FreeSpeak II. Edge is FreeSpeak Edge. The belt pack looks a little different. If you go to the ClearCom website, there are great recorded webinars on Edge. I think there's another one that's actually coming up shortly live if you want to participate in one live, but the recorded ones are good. It's a different belt pack. Instead of having 4 buttons, you have 4 buttons, but you also have 4 more here, so it's 8 buttons, 8 channels, 8 point-to-points, whatever you want. It's very, very cool. It uses the 5 gigahertz spectrum. I hear a lot of people saying, oh, it's 5G. 5G is telephones. It's 5 gigahertz. 5 gigahertz is an interesting area of the spectrum. This happens to be 1.9 gigahertz. We also make 2.4 in this form factor. The 5 gigahertz stuff, which is Edge, which I'll just take a quick second talking about. The Edge system at 5 gigahertz, it's a much shorter wavelength. And there are a lot of facilities who have had an issue with something called multipath. Multipath is when the signal comes from the transceiver and hits the belt pack, or goes from the belt pack and hits the transceiver, but at the same time, it hits that building or that mountain or that piece of, I don't know, audience, whatever, and hits the transceiver or the belt pack a few moments later, and I'm getting a confused belt pack or transceiver. Who am I supposed to look at? They both look kind of good. Now, we've made some good advances with some extra sort of plugins to help ameliorate that issue, but just the physics of 1.9 is a little tricky. So in 5 gigahertz, it actually thrives on multipath. A 5 gigahertz signal is shorter. It will not propagate as far. However, if it has something to bounce off of, then it'll go way farther. And it likes to see bounce back and stuff. It laughs at multipath. So in those places where multipath is an issue, it's great. Edge is not for everybody. I liken it to the very, you don't take a bone saw to make, trim for your door or for, to cut off a piece of wood. You use it for bones. It's for a surgeon. It's not for you. So I'm not saying that it's not for everybody, but it's not for everybody. It's complicated. It requires frequency coordination, and it will be out there, and we'll all be playing with it soon. But it's not going to be as ubiquitous as this stuff. It's just not quite as easy to deploy. And I'm not putting it down in any way. It's a fantastic product. It'll be out shortly. It's not available yet. It's still in beta. But Edge will be what it's good for. It's fantastic for. It will perform in places where no other comms perform. So that's what that is. Okay, so this is starting to come up, and it's already up, and I've seen that. All right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this button, and I'm going to push it and hold it until I see a red LED. Okay, so now it's going to start to flash different colors. Let me, hang on a second. I'm hiding. What am I doing? Okay, there, I want to do this. Okay, you see it's green, flashing green, and it's flashing green still. I did something wrong. Let me try this again. Okay, let me wait a second. I'm sorry. I picked my finger off the button and kind of messed up. I'm going to wait till I see the LED come on. What I'm doing here is I am resetting this transceiver back to, I'm resetting the DHCP address on this. No matter what, if somebody said it's static, it's going to reset. If it had a DHCP address, it's going to get a new one now. So as soon as I see that light start to flash, I can hold that button down, and you'll notice in a second it'll start to show me other colors. So I'm seeing that one and green. And as soon as I see red, not orange, but red, which is now, I can let go. I've just reset this. Now, if I held it for even longer, I would have first birthdayed the whole thing. Not necessary to do, but convenient sometimes when the brown stuff and the fan get together. Okay, I'm going to leave that up there for a minute. And now we're going to start to talk about EHX, and you'll see why I did that in just a few. No other questions coming in. Have I missed any questions? Has anybody written anything that I've missed? Guys, you want to help me out here?
I had a
There's
question. Go ahead,
one
Pete.
little question, which hadn't been posted yet.
Oh, okay.
It is quite long, so let me wait till I get it posted here.
So
Quite
Pete,
long.
while you're doing that, I'm going to ask my question.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just kind of going over reviewing the number of IPA and EQ, right? So we know that on IPA cards I can have 64 transceivers according to the manual, right? On there according to the website, but in a max count of 50 belt packs.
Okay. Right.
So
in one contiguous RF space.
One contiguous RF space, correct.
If I have a gap, I have another 50 on the other side of that gap. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, just contiguous, so that's
Yep.
good.
Yep.
I made a note about your that it's not possible to co-locate a 1.9 on EQ and a 1.9 on the IPA card, which makes
Right.
perfect sense. But I
Right.
could put a 2.4 on my EQ card, right?
You could.
I could, right? And then I could put a 1.9 IPA.
Yep.
Correct? Okay.
Yep. You could. It's not sanctioned or blessed,
Understood.
but there are ways to bribe the AEs into telling you the secret code. For now, obviously, since this is going
But
out
I mean,
into
off
the public,
the shelf, if I
somebody's
just
going
plugged
to hear
it in,
it.
would it work?
No.
That's okay. That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, off the shelf, it wouldn't work, and for obvious reasons.
So I read this really long, great question from Miles Elwell.
Uh-huh.
But I'm going to bury it down, boil it down to the question.
Okay.
In IFBs, you have source, destination, and return.
Yep.
And I can answer that. Source and destination. Source is where you're going to go into their ear, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it's the other way around?
Source is the program audio that you're feeding the talent. That's
right. That's what maybe a mixed minus or something, right? Destination goes to their IFB transmitter or directly to a hardwired IFB.
Yeah, destination would be the port on the matrix that it will be sent out to the talent.
Right.
An MVX port, or yes, could be.
And the return is usually a pre-fader feed of the talent's microphone. So on a panel, you can listen to their microphone.
Right. Exactly. Yep. That's what that is. And, we're running long, as we usually do in this case. I hope people can stand by with us for a while. I plan on actually showing you these things. I'm going to do
We got plenty of time.
I'm going to do a quick.
As long as you want.
Hey, baby. All right. Maybe you can get my wife to agree to such a thing. All right. Here we go. I think I was just heard. Okay, let's go to EHX. There we go. Okay. So let's start out. This is EHX. I happen to be in version 11, and just so you know, my help about shows me it's version 11. Very important is this number underneath. You see 19.224.17. That is information of which iteration of version 11.1 this is. In the world of manufacture, I can tell you that many times a version comes out and then we tweak it a little bit, and then we might tweak it a little bit more, and that tweak might work. Maybe one tweak back works better than this. So it's always important to know when you're talking about this stuff, what the exact iteration of that version is. So that's what that is. The first thing I usually do, well, you know what I'm going to do, hang on, let me just do this. I'm going to click, I can leave them up, whatever. I usually open this first. So when you open it up, you discover the system. Do I really need to start from scratch, or can I just dive in? I don't know how many beginner people are here that want to see the whole start from scratch. Yep. By the way, Miles, that's correct. Yes, your destination is the electrosonics pack, but your destination in the software is not the electrosonics pack. The electrosonics pack plugs in to the destination. It's the port on the matrix that you selected, that you plugged the electrosonics pack into, Miles. I just wanted to clear that question up. So when we get to well, let's just look at it really quickly. I'll show you an IFB configuration. An IFB configuration, here, I'll make a new one. That's a new one. Okay, come on, there it goes. And I'm gonna call this IFB Miles. You're now eternally there. And I'm gonna call it Mike, I'll call it Pre3, because I'm bringing your microphone, Miles, I'm bringing your mic on the inbound. Every port is input and output, so it's duplex. Okay, my destination port would be, let's say I go to cards and ports, I'm really jumping around now, and I make an MVX. Remember we said MVX is 16 analog ports. I'll take port 16, I'm going to make it a direct port, and I'm going to call it 2 miles. I'm not going to call it miles, I want to call it something different, so I'm sure I know what. It's direct to electrosonics. Okay? Whoops. Okay, whatever. All right, now I'm going to come back to my IFB page.
Do you want to do a split port with that?
I don't necessarily have to do it. Well, it could. The only reason for me to do a split port is if I was.
The other half of it could be the return.
Yeah. Okay. But the reason I do a split port here is if I was actually assigning this port. Okay.
Right.
So effectively it is 2 miles and pre. Okay. And pre, I don't have enough letters for that. What I did here is I made this port 7, IFB1, mic 1. I don't have to make this a split port. It already is split. The only reason I would make it a split port, and I'll do that here, the only reason I would make it a split, we call it a split label actually now, okay, is if I was going to actually program this onto a panel. Let me do it. I'm going to come over here onto a panel, go to interfaces, go to IFB right here. I'm going to program the talk and the listen. And now it splits the bottom as a talk and the top as a listen. This one I won't. I'll just call it, and it gives it the same name to both the talk and the listen. The reason I do a split, this is a holdover from the old days. The reason I do a split port is if I was going to actually program that port to this panel. But I don't program the port to the panel, I program the virtual IFB. I'm going to program this guy. Okay, so if I go back to my panel, again, I know I'm hopping around, folks, please bear with me. And I go to my IFBs and I expand that category. Let's go to my play-by-play. I hold my control key down and I click. That gives me both the talk and the listen. Now I've sent this as an IFB. IFBs by nature are split. You see how it's purple in the software? It means it's an IFB. So when I push down, I'm talking to the IFB. This is a lever key. So when I push up on the lever, just like on a KP panel, it will engage the listen. So I'm listening to the pre-fade of that talent. Going back here, I'll show you what I did. Play-by-play, the virtual play-by-play IFB, which by nature is split label. I could come over here if I wanted to and unsplit that, but I don't, okay? By the way, when I click on a port or a device, it gives me advanced settings on the right-hand side. Okay, so my play-by-play, the source is the mix minus that comes from the audio console. In this case, it happens to be coming in from where? From my from port 7 of my MVX cards. However, I could make it maybe the Dante is my source. Maybe Dante 1 is where I've put in my audio console, my Karak, my Lavo, my whatever, my Yamaha. I've configured an aux feed that is or a resource feed that is the mix minus that I want to go to this guy. And I've put it onto the Dante stream. Because I have a Dante card in this matrix, I can use that as my source. I could make anything as my source that comes into the matrix. Okay? It could be a Matty stream. It could be, you know, whatever. These mix minuses happen to be analogs. Okay. Anyway, the destination is the physical port out of which my IFB will eject from the matrix, okay? When I push the button to talk to play-by-play in this case, or if I want to talk to Miles, I push the Miles button on my let's get to where we are, mix minus. Let's just say it's this. No, it's not that. Let's make it a Matty. Dante. We're using Dante. I'm going to take Dante 3, and Dante 3 is going to be, again, Dante is duplex. So, oh, wait a minute, Dante, I said Dante 3, not Matty 3. Come on. There we go. Okay. Dante 3 is my destination. It's going to the Dante network. In the studio, there is a Dante demuxer that will take Dante channel 3 and turn it into an XLR connection for analog audio. Or I may have a transmitter that can read Dante, can be a Dante device, and I can route it directly to there through this because it's interacting with Dante. And the inbound could be that microphone pre-fade. That's Miles' microphone. The source might be Dante 1, just like my play-by-play guy has the same source. Not everybody needs a different source. Sometimes I may want to have everybody have the same source. Okay? I can also change sources from, remember we were talking about dynamic earlier? I could use that, or I could use my panel. My intercom panel can be configured to be able to assign sources to IFBs in real time. That's a different subject. We're not going to get in there. Let's talk a little bit about my...
Wait.
Okay,
we got one question. Stay back on that same screen.
Okay.
We have a question about that same screen. The talent has said his interrupt level from the director is too hot. Can you change that level on the fly?
Yes, you can. Okay. So what you can, there are a couple of ways to do it. One is we have a cross-point map, but I would never do this with Dwayne Kuiper because he's just messing with his brother, Jeff, in the truck to give us all a hard time. He doesn't really have a problem hearing. He's just giving us a hard time. So what I could do is I could come over to the cross-point map, find the producer's panel, come over here, and go to my IFB play-by-play, which is here, my IFB1, right-click, and go to level, and change that cross point. Again, the left is the source, the upper area here, horizontal is the destination, and I could just make his ears bleed, which I would love to do one day, and just say, okay, now that's 18 dB above, so he's got quite a buzz going on in his headset right now. I can then come back here when he changes his mind and says it's too loud, and I can bring it all the way down to here to, let's say, -30, or anywhere I like. I can do that in real time, and that happens in real time. However, that's volatile. If I apply a change to the map, if I send that change to the matrix, it may override that. So what I would more likely do is give Jeff, the producer, on the producer's panel. Here I am on the producer's panel. Here's the IFB. I could come over here and right-click and go to, see where it says level adjust to output. So instead of this up and down arrow here being my level adjustment, this particular panel doesn't have knobs. We make panels with knobs, but this particular one has levers. So I have up and down arrow, okay? So normally when I use this up and down arrow, it would be the amount of Dwayne's mic to me pre-fade. However, since I made this instead of the cross point, I made it the output. Now when I turn this down, I'm bringing his level down or bringing his level up. Only my microphone, only to that destination.
Is there any way to, instead of giving that functionality to the director, to give that functionality to the A1 on his panel for the director's key?
Okay, so what I do is, now you may not be aware of this, but in version 11, which is this and the one you'll get, we have something called supervisor mode. Okay, and supervisor mode, let me get to a panel that's actually plugged in, which is this one here. Okay, that one wasn't plugged in, so it won't do it. This one is live. Now, if I went over here, right, and I made that go up, in the software, I'd actually be controlling his panel, right?
But
Follow
you've
me?
already set his panel to control that cross point. So if he pushes the up down, thinking he's changing the volume of his listen,
I would let him know that, or I would
okay.
put the listens in another place, so they could have control over his.
Yeah.
It's his older brother. He would never dare turn him off.
There
So
we go.
that's okay.
There we
Yeah,
go.
there you go.
Older brothers always beat up on younger brothers.
That's the way it is.
So we have 3 votes to start from scratch.
Thank you, Derek.
That's 3 out of 72 people listening. So they win because nobody voted to just do it expert.
Okay, so let's start from scratch. Okay, I'm going to close all this stuff. Matter of fact, I'll just do this. I'm going to go to new project. Yeah, sure, save it. Why not? Okay. Save project as. Okay, just leave it there. Okay. All right, I'm making a new project. I have connected to the frame. Now, this presupposes something. This presupposes that I went to the matrix. Whoa. It looks like I paused my. I want to show you my whole screen here. Do you see my whole screen now? Anybody? Okay, let me stop
We see the matrix program.
Okay, I want to show the whole screen because there are people here who. Nope, you don't see it. Okay.
Well, you have to pull down the little menu underneath the start button and say whole screen.
There we go. Now you see it, right?
Yep, got all the icons on the bottom.
Good, very good. Okay, you like my little guy there? Great. Okay, if I go over here to where I do my network stuff, and I click here, and I go to my network settings, and I can also get through the control panel, and I go to Ethernet, and I go over here to change adapter options, and I'm going to go to my little techie dongle, which is what I'm using to connect my computer, and I go to properties. I know this is a review for a lot of you guys, but those who don't know, by the way, I have a video that shows you this. You can ping me for it if this is too fast. TCP/IP4. Normally what happens is I would show this as obtain automatically, and this would be blank because it's doing DHCP. In other words, it's getting its address from the network. But I want to be on a static IP address. So I typed in the address that I know that this matrix frame is connected to. The matrix frame is 192.168.42.150. And I'll show you how you can see that in a little bit. So I made mine on the same subnet with the last octet being different. I used 18. That's my lucky number. Okay? So that's how you change that. Everybody knows that. And for the people who don't, please email rom@clearcom.com and I'll send you a video to show you how to do that. Okay? That's the first thing we do. Once we're on the same subnet and I open up a new project, EHX is going to see that there's a matrix frame, in this case it's a delta frame, that is standing by and ready to be worked with on my network. So I'm going to take it and drag it in and drop it. Again, you have to be with a live frame to do this, okay? What I'm going to do with this live frame, since I don't know what it's got, I want to see what it's got. There are several choices. I can make a completely empty configuration, which is what I would have to do if I was offline. So if you get the software and you're playing but you're not connected, you will have to make one from scratch, but that's okay. I'll also send you one that's semi-built so you can have an idea how that looks like. Or I could just do discover hardware, which allows me to, anything that's plugged in right now to the matrix, it will see and it will show me in the configuration. Or I'm going to do what I really like to do and what it defaults to in this case, which is retrieve the map from the matrix. So it'll not only show me all the hardware, it'll also show me how everything is configured. And I'm going to do that, okay? And it's going to tell me I did it, and there it is. And you'll notice here that it's green. See that green? It says Steiny Vision because Eric Steinberg built this frame a while ago. Okay, we can change that name if we want to. Okay. There we go. Okay. There you go. All right. And it's a new configuration. I've given this name, and you're going to see why this is important in a little bit. It's a matrix 1. It's a delta. I could change it if I'm going to another form factor matrix, a larger frame or a smaller frame, I can select that, but it knows it's a delta and it knows the IP address that it's supposed to have. It's green because looky here, green means, this is our key, green means EHX, which is this software, matches the project, which is what we call what we're seeing. It's called a project or a map. The project matches what's on the matrix. If it was orange, it would mean that I've made a change to the software. I haven't sent it to the matrix yet. I'm still connected, but what's in the software is not jiggy with what's on the matrix. If it's red, it means, dude, your matrix is a different firmware version than the software version of your EHX software. You can't really work together. And if it's gray, it means I have no connection to the matrix. So if I go ahead and pull my connection, it should take a little bit to, excuse me, it takes a minute for the page to refresh. I could just refresh it. What I'll do is I'll go to System, Layout, and you see it's gray. Now I'm going to go ahead and plug it in to my little dongle guy there, and voila, there it goes. It comes up. What's this question here? Do you have an attenuation setting? Automatic attenuation of the program IFB is latched by a predetermined DB. Okay, yes, we do, and we'll get to that shortly. Yes. Ayodeji, I saw your question, and as soon as we get back to IFBs, I'll show you how that's done. That's the amount of attenuation I'm assuming you're asking for. Yes, that is easily changeable and selectable for each. You can have it different for every IFB. Okay, so I see this here. By the way, if I right-click on this green box, I can apply the map, which I don't have to do because it's already green, it's everything is fine. I can go into configuration and do some cool things that we'll talk about. I can update the firmware, or I can get a firmware report that will tell me all the firmware that's on everything in this matrix right now, and it's attached to the matrix, and it shows me every device, every panel, every card, and every piece of firmware, because some of them have, several pieces of firmware in it. It's very useful, and I can, if I want to, export it as a file. Excuse me. If I have an issue, I can go and send this to somebody like me who can explore it and tell you, oh yes, this is an issue. Your firmware is out of whack. Here's the new firmware. Here's how you blow it in. Okay, so. Excuse me, that's 1 second. Okay, so attenuation setting, yes, we know that. Other things we can do here, I said you can update firmware. There's a wizard that you can open up. I can change my IP settings. I can come over here. It tells me what my IP address is, subnet mask, default gateway if I had one. If I want to change that, I come over here to edit. I make the changes, and then I would check the box. DHCP is not the way I would like to go on a matrix. I don't recommend it. So that's something I would, if you check the box, it'll make the change, or you can just exit out. Okay. Other things are I can save diagnostics, which gives me a really big fat file, a zipped file of the health, deep drill down of the health of every single device, every single piece of firmware, every single action that the matrix does, and it does thousands of them a second. So it's a very big file. We use that when we're doing some big projects. If I was starting from scratch and I wasn't connected, I could just right click here, add a matrix, come over here, give it a name, call it Schmorker. There you go. An homage to my friend Derek. Choose the type of matrix it is. Let's say it's a Omega, the big daddy. And I think the IP address is going to be 192.168.42.151 because I'm going to eventually try to make this and this connect with trunking. And again, I could have 64 of these on this page and connect them all with trunking and blah, 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 blah. We'll see how that goes if we have the time for it. Okay. We'll talk about this stuff in a bit. In the hardware area, my best buddy is cards and ports, which shows me, in this case, my Delta, as you remember, has only 4 card slots. So I can right-click here and set the card type and make whatever I want. Let's do this. Let's go to the blank one. See, that's the live one. See, it's green because it's live. This is gray. That's the one that's not connected. And I go into hardware here. This one, remember, in cards and ports, it's orange because nothing's been configured yet. I have my 15 slots. So I can right-click, set card type. I can make it an analog one. I can make this an analog one if I want to. I can make this one. I said analog, set card type. There we go. That's it. I can make this one maybe an IPA card. Where does it go? There you go. eIPA. Okay. And it's going to ask me, how do I want to configure this? I have my LAN 1. I'm going to make my LAN 1 192.168.42.106. I just know that's correct. Trust me. And I want to make this, okay, it knows the subnet. I have to change the subnet mask first. These network guys are goofy. Yeah. Okay. What the hell is going on here? What? Is this because I'm not connected? I don't want to get too hung up on this. I'm just going to give it one more try. Okay, maybe there was, whoops, maybe there was something there. All right. And I'm going to make my AES67 also DHCP just like the last one. It'll get an address once it gets plugged in. Okay. And by the way, I did that on LAN 3. I made a separation between these two. Okay. Esoteric stuff. We'll talk about it when we do a deep dive at another time. Okay. Now I can add a port. Now you'll notice the ports are blank, but I can add a port. Let's say I want to make, whoa, what is that? Oh, okay, it's an Amber Alert. Go away. There we go. I'm going to make this a belt pack, a FreeSpeak belt pack, and I'm going to call it FSBP dash, and watch this. This is a really cool trick, X. And then I'm going to say character to replace, X, and seed value is 1. And how many do I want to put here? Let's say I want to put, let's put 8 belt packs. I'll add them. How cool is this? So what it did is it added the belt packs, but it also gave me names in sequential order. Remember, I made that X and I said, replace X with a number. What's the seed value? 1. I want it to be 1 after another, after another, after another, integers in an order. Okay, now I'm going to add another port and I'm going to make it an Agent IC client, so mobile client. And let's call it AIC. You'll see why I'm doing it like this for now. AIC-X and that and that. And let's make 8 of these. Okay, and there we go. Now I have 8 Agent IC clients and 8 FreeSpeak belt packs. I don't have to add transceivers. The transceivers, remember, are on that AES 67 stream. Things are a little confusing in that world, but that's okay. Act of faith. We'll all buy it. Okay, now I can highlight this. Remember I said I highlight things and I get advanced settings. I'm not going to be able to do too much with these FreeSpeak belt packs at this point because in the card, they're really just placeholders. However, for the mobile client, I get, when I click on that port number and I get my advanced settings, I get a whole blank load full of stuff, okay? And what I really want to look at is my IP port options right here. I want to give that a name. I'm going to call it user 1, and I'm going to give them a password of 1234, very easy, and all this stuff will make sense later. I'm going to tell this to be internet. And as a matter of fact, I can come over here, click here, hold the shift key, do that, and make them all connect internet. The reason I'm going to do that is I'm going to later on make this so it can connect to the public internet, and I want these clients to be aware that they're going to the public internet and not to expect a very fast connection. Okay? All right. Each one can get a different name. For now, I'm just going to, we have these names, okay? And that's the name I'll see on a panel, but the username is how they're going to log in. So user, I've made a mistake here, user 2. And I'm going to go over here and click on that guy and make, instead of the MDNS number, I'll call it user 1. Okay, and 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, I'm doing this all on a blank slate. Let's go back to the live one. This is the live one. That's my card. I've already configured some things here. Here's my mobile client that I configured. You'll notice I called it user 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's going over a wide area network. I probably actually can even call it LAN, speed it up, make it even faster, less latent, and still have good quality because I'm only going over a local area network here. I'm going from, the way I'm working today is I've got my matrix and a switch and a Wi-Fi router, and that's how I'm going to connect. I'm not going out to the public internet so I can go LTE to the Agent IC stuff. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about some other things in my hardware area. Belt packs. When I register a belt pack, which I've done here, I can come over here and do over the air. Okay, I can go over the air belt packs, or I can register a belt pack with a cable. Another thing that's very important and why I'm really encouraging you to get this software is, you know, you can upgrade your FreeSpeak belt packs over the air from your base station. But if you wanted to upgrade them when you didn't have connectivity to a transceiver or you're working in your hotel room, you can use this tool here in EHX to apply the wireless firmware via USB connector. So you plug a USB cable into your laptop, plug the USB micro into the USB connector on the bottom of your belt pack, and then you just navigate to the file you want to get and then update that firmware. And this utility is very handy, and it's way faster to do one belt pack like this than it is to do over the air. Over the air might take 10 minutes or so to do it. This takes 3 minutes. If you're doing a lot of belt packs and you have connection, it's best to do it over the air because they'll go faster. But if you're only doing 2 or 3 or 4, this is the way to go. Again, that was tools, drop-down menu, apply, and then you get the wizard. Okay, let's see if I can look at some of these other. Mark Kennedy always got a question. When you show up on site and you have mismatched firmware, what do? Update the firmware or find the matching software? Find the matching software, Grasshopper. Updating firmware on the matrix in most cases is an arduous process. If you're just going from one version to another iteration of that version, it may be easy to do. However, when you're going, let's say you have version 11 and they have version 12. Let's say it's a couple of months from now and version 12 is out. You need all kinds of programming devices and all kinds of special programs to program those programming devices and special cables and the know-how to do all this without bricking the box. Get the software upgrade or downgrade. Don't mess with the firmware, please. Okay. Now, I know there are some of you out there who, well, I've bored you by now if you're out there and know how to do this, but there may be people who started this webinar who knew how to do it because I saw their names earlier, Henry. But I don't recommend that you upgrade or downgrade a matrix frame or a piece of matrix hardware. It ain't easy. And I don't know, I'm happy that way. It's job security for me. So you can ping me, tell me what matrix hardware the frame has, and I can get you the software for it. Piece of cake. Not a problem. By the way, and I'm going to do something now with I'm going to stop sharing for a second. I'm assuming you can all see my camera. Take it over to this Delta here. As you remember, as I said, the top one is not active. The bottom one is active. You see more LEDs there. Let's see if I can shade the glare so you see there are more LEDs active in the second slot in P2. If I come over to this button that says engineering and I press it, look what happens. It's going to start to show me version 11.1, IP address 192.168.42.150, and it'll show me the subnet mask and the dongle ID and all kinds of other things. Very, very useful. It's that engineering button. Okay, so if you don't know what version, if you aren't connected to the frame, you won't be able to see in your software what version it is, because you can see it on the software in an event log and something else that we'll get to in a little bit. Okay, so belt packs is where I register my belt pack. Not a whole heck of a lot to do there, except I can, if I want, tell it to be a fixed role. Now, you can do the same sort of a thing in the base station. I can say, you know, be dynamic. When the belt pack boots up, show the list of roles. Or I can fix it to a role. And here's where I would do it. Okay, in my basic options, not a whole heck of a lot, just the description, which is the same as this field here. Okay, you get 25 characters in this one here. Comments gives me 255 characters. So I can write here, you know, I know this is Mark Kennedy's belt pack, so I can type, Mark is going to ask me a lot of questions and I'm going to have answers. Or I can write, Henry Cohen is going to ask me a question that he knows the answer to, but he's a nice guy and he's trying to educate everybody and realizes that I forgot what I needed to tell you. I can write all that down because that operator has got that comment. Or on April 22nd, we had a problem with the B button, please track. You can keep notes there too. 255 characters right there. Okay. When you have, let's go to our MVX card and let's go to this panel here. The second port is the panel that I have behind me. I'm assuming you can still see the software. Or do I need? I think I need to share my.
You need to share it.
I'm sorry. Okay, there we go. Okay, there we go. Now you see it. So what I was just showing you, by the way, was the, the belt packs. This is the area here where in the belt pack page, and belt packs isn't hardware, they're confusing. There's belt packs and belt pack rolls. We'll talk about each. Belt packs, I can use this section here to select whether it has no default roll or whether I'm going to give it a fixed roll. Okay, and here's the comments area where I was being so snarky to Mark and Henry. Okay, going back to cards and ports, if I look at my MVX card, that second port is the panel that we were looking at before. You'll see there's a whole bunch of stuff that opens up here. That I got a lot of stuff. If I go to a direct port, direct means a 4-wire port, I have quite a few options, but way less than I used to have. So in my global options, for example, I have some stuff, but I don't have any panel options like I had with a panel. And this thing really populates big. So my panel options is a gigantic category. And here's where I can do things like change how long the reply key is going to flash, how bright the keys are, if I'm going to add any expansion panels, lots of things here. Listen again. Listen again is a feature. If I say something and I miss the cue, I can hit the aux button on the panel and it'll repeat what I just heard. So I can say how long I want it to hold on to that message, maybe for 20 minutes. I have page gain and page override. This means when somebody has their speaker turned off and they have their headset plugged in, but their headset's not on their ear, I can push a button and from my panel, turn their panel speaker on and wake them up, say, hey, put your headset on, I need you, which is great for the tape room when those guys are telling jokes about whatever they tell jokes about, that snake pit. Okay, page override, that's what that is. So I would check that and I would select the volume I want it to go to when I override the page. And if I hover over any of these, it's going to tell me what it does. It's a pretty good little system. Page gain, yep, okay. I also have a gain section, which will give me the gains for that panel and that panel only. Or I could select 2 panels, and right now I've selected both of them, and any changes I make here are going to be affected to both panels. Or if I just wanted to do the one, I just click on the one. I can change my headset gain or my gooseneck mic gain. I can make the main volume off. By default is -36. They're rotary encoders. They're not physical pots. So I can make it so that when the operator turns the knob all the way counterclockwise, it'll turn all the way off. Typically, we'd make it -36, which is still pretty quiet, but that ensures that they'll never turn it all the way off, just to make sure that they don't turn it down and then miss a cue. But you can change all these functions yourself. What network switch is direct? Ryan, what network switch is directly on top of the, what network switch is that? It's an MPEG-3. Who makes this? I don't know who makes this. Eric Steinberg loaned it to me. Let's see who makes it. It's a company that doesn't have a name on it. Wow. Sorry. I feel terrible. I feel like, the drummer that doesn't know what the name of the cymbals are.
Probably picked it up at just some stationery store somewhere.
Yeah. No, it's a really cool switch. It does QoS and IGP and the whole bit, and PoE, and I feel terrible. I'm going to lose sleep over this one. Oh, wait a minute. There's something on the bottom. I can't get to it now. I'll find out for you. Okay. Obviously, there's a Cisco on top of that one, too, that you're looking at the side, a little half-rack switch. But okay, now you got my curiosity. I got to stop and look. I'm sorry. Okay, now wrecking everything. It is a model number MPEG. Where's the name of the damn manufacturer? This is a little frightening.
It's always terrible when that herd of squirrels run by Rom's house.
Wow.
Guess you have to look it up from the
24
MAC address.
PoE. I can't believe image micro pan. Image micro pan. It's German. So
I think I
wow.
got one of those in my cereal box this morning.
You guy. All right. Well, and so much for me knowing what I got here. You know, I always make fun of the guys who look at a console they've been working on. Hey, what are you mixing on? It's got faders. Yeah. Okay. Well, so much for me. All right. Anyway, back to this. So you got a lot of advanced options here. You can play with all kinds of cool stuff. We do have logic that you can attach to a panel, so I can make a foot switch. Remember, there was that DB25 in the back that you had audio connections to. We have another DB25 just for local relays or local GPIO. So I can make foot switches to do a variety of different things. Turn a mic on or off, activate something, make a speaker, a studio announce, whatever. Any of these things can be there. These are the different functions. I get 10 letters that I can label. So when I go to actually look at a panel and I program this panel onto that panel, it'll say those 10 letters as I've written them here. I can also have something called an alt text, but it's a little esoteric. It's so I can have a name for a panel, but have an alternate text. It's particularly used in places like Al Jazeera was the one who commissioned us to do it, so that I can be writing in a foreign character, in their case in Arabic characters. But let's say the German night guy comes in, he doesn't read Arabic, so he can push a button and change maf'ik to producer, and then switch it back again when the morning guy comes in who knows how to read that stuff. Those sorts of things are all available here. And the Dante card, the Dante gives us 64 ports. I can make them either directs or they can be trunks. Again, I can select one or two of those.
Set up a couple of trunks on both units and group them and drag them together?
Yeah, that's a good idea. So let's say we made, what did I do on the other one? I had an IPA card. So I'll
add a Dante.
I'm going to add a Dante. So I'll add a Dante card here. Dante, I think it was a 64 I did on the other one. And I'm only using the primary. Yep. Okay. So now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make, I did 8 ports. So let's do the same thing so this look prettier. So I'm going to make 9 through 18, right click, set port type, trunk. Okay. Thank you for reminding me about that. And I'm going to go to this guy and go to the Dante card and go through 9 through 18, set port type, trunk. Okay, and now they're all trunks. And I'm just going to call this T1, T2, etc. It's just going to make my life a little easier if I give them a name. Whoops. Sorry. This is the sort of tedious stuff that makes us all crazy. Let's I'll just label the 8s. And I'm going to call this, where is this? This Dante. And I'm going to call this D for Derek. D1, D for Dante, D2, D3, D4. Sorry about this. No one ever likes to sit through this sort of programming stuff. Okay, now if I go back to my layout page, and by the way, I can take this and slide it over if I want it to be there. You notice this is orange because what? Because I've made changes. I have not sent them to the matrix yet. By the way, when I add trunks or change any of my ports function, when I apply the change, I have to do it with a reset. And I'm going to talk to you about resets in a little bit. Anyway, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this first one and drag it over to here, and take this second one and
Can you
drag
just
it over here.
group them together and drag one line?
I don't believe you can.
Yes, you can. You have to go back to the other page where the trunks are in
Oh,
Dante.
make trunk groups.
And
Trunk
select
groups.
all of them together and say make group
Group trunks.
trunks.
There you go. You're a nice man.
Anything to help.
You know what? I haven't done a trunking matrix since we added that feature, so there you go. Actually, I have, but I've been lazy. You know, Pete, I learn something great from you every time I do one of these things. Okay, so now when I come
I have
over
a whole
here,
book of things that you don't know that I just keep in my back pocket.
oh, very good. And it shows group. See, I've made those all one group, but I haven't given these names yet, so that's why they don't show up as in the group.
You only group part of them.
No, I only gave names to the first 8. That's why. And I only selected them to be grouped. You're right, but there you go. So now I have these groups, and I can move it around. Look at this, it's like a video game. It's a lot of fun. Now these are connected. Now, as long as these are on the same network, which they are, and the same VLAN, which they're not connected to, but they would be joined together with, in this case, 10 trunk lines. So there can be 10 conversations. Let's say 2 of them were common party lines. That would mean I could have 8 discrete point-to-point conversations between a panel on this guy. And by the way, when I go to program my panel, let's do this. Let's go to, I'm sorry, let's do this. I should have done this earlier. Let's come over here in my hardware, cards and ports, and I'm just going to make a panel here. And I'm going to, let's make it a vPanel push. Oh, rotary. There we go, a rotary panel. And I'll call it MDY, Mark Kennedy. There you go. Okay. Now, if I come over here and I double click on this, it's going to give me, it's going to actually take me right to the panel. And if I want to, and this is where it really gets cool, because they're trunked, now I see 2 different matrices here. So this panel, the M. Kennedy panel, is on the Schmorker. However, the Erskine Vision, okay, he's on the Schmorker. But I can go over the Erskine Vision and give him one of my panels, the A1 panel. Now, and by the way, if it's a point-to-point, I would only make it as a talk. I don't need to make it as a talk and a listen typically. Now, when this operator pushes that button to talk, he or she will be talking to a panel on this matrix. And I can do the same thing in reverse. I'll collapse this and I'll go over to this over here, and I'll give them the M. Kennedy. And there you go. Come on, click again. Bloop. By the way, if I click on the bottom of this particular kind, it's a talk. If I moved it up to the top, it's a listen. See the green? See the red? If I hold the control key, you heard it click, and I click on it with my mouse, I get both the talk and the listen. It's a little carpal tunnel saver there. So now I have the agent.
Is there a way to move a talk and listen together to another key, or do you have to move them one at a time?
No, wouldn't that be nice? No, unfortunately, it's just one at a time. We've put in requests for that to be fixed, but no. However, just so you know, for those who are not familiar, if I take this and move it over where that is, it'll just flip it. So now I have a split label here, right? I'm listening to the agent I see, but I've got Mark Kennedy's panel here. If Mark Kennedy would point to me, I would hear him, But if I lifted this up, I'd hear the agent IC. That gets a little confusing, so I'll just put it over there. Okay. Now, so these are the basics of panel programming. I have a main page, as you see here, and I also have 8 shift pages, so I could have a whole buttload of things. I could have over 100 buttons on this panel. And I can, if I want to, I can name the panel. I'll call this one, let's say IFBs. And then now, when I look at the shift pages, instead of saying shift page 1, it'll say shift page IFB, and it'll be the same on the panel. If I hold my shift button here for 2 seconds, it gives me the shift menu, and that would then say, it would say IFBs, shift 1, shift 2, shift 3, shift 4, shift 5. If I made shift 3 panels or something else, it would show that name instead of the default shift name. Okay, let's get to something a little bit more interesting. Like, well, let's not do that yet. Let's stay in configuration. Let's talk about those IFBs that we were mentioning before. So I can have, if I want, I can have this IFB, my play-by-play, which is going to this destination, which happens to be on the MVX card. But let's say, I don't know, sometimes my play-by-play guy, instead of being play-by-play, I'll call it Fred, because Fred's going to sit in that chair. Okay? All right. So Fred's sitting in that chair. I'm thinking of Dominagomedy right now. Okay. Now, Fred is usually in this station, but every once in a while, he'll go across to the other studio in the other building. What I can do here is something real cool, is let's go down to this guy, Schmorker, and go to my hardware, and go to my cards and ports, and go to my MVX card, and I'm going to, for lack of a better term, I'll put it right here, and I'll call this SCH IFB1. Okay, Schmorker IFB1. Okay, that's going to be my inbound mic and my outbound destination when I come over here to IFBs. Watch this. This is so cool. Go back to the Erskine frame. Come over here. Select from the other guy, from the other, not my, I'm on the Erskine frame, but I'm looking at the Schmorker stuff, and I'm going to take this, and I'm going to put it here. Come on. Okay, I changed that. Now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to stack, and I'm going to come over here and do Erskine IFBs. I mean interfaces. See that? I've got 2. When I push that button to talk to Fred, I'm talking to him whether he's in this studio or that studio. And I'm hearing him back where on either microphone, whichever one is live. But his mix minus is always the source that he's hearing. And I can collapse this, but you see the shadow here reminds me that I've got more than one destination and more than one return. I could also have more than one source. If I wanted to, I could do this. And now I have that. So my IFBs can be really cool. The nice part about these virtual IFBs is, let's say this destination port blew up, and I wanted to make it another destination port. So instead of IFB1, I'm going to move them over to the IFB2 chair because nobody's doing that today. So I can put it there. I've just changed that destination and that return without having to go to every panel and change the IFB. Well, I don't have it here. It's on this one, actually. I don't have to go to every panel that had Fred and change it to color. Even though I had color there, I could just do that. But you follow what I'm saying? Because it's virtual, it just moves really easily. By the way, I can copy or paste any of the pages, or load and save the entire panel and copy it over to other panels on this page. I also have a mixer, which allows me to change gain, to have compression for mics. This is where I can add external inputs and outputs. All my stuff here can be in real time if I go live, or I can just save it to a file and then paste it to other panels too if I wanted to.
Can you take a 4-wire port and build a party line and show us how to do that?
Sure thing. So just let me take a look at these questions here. I thought it was possibly a BC switch. It could be. I don't know what that switch is, and I'm afraid to find out. But I'll find out for you, Ryan. Tom Kaplan, a few Agent IC questions connecting to a frame. What is the maximum number of keys you can assign to a mobile client? Good question. And by the way, while I'm in this page, let me show you how that's done. If I remember, I created a mobile client on my IPA card, right? I went port, add, excuse me, mobile client, and I'm going to call this mobile client. I'll call this one Tom. Okay, I'm going to edit. I'm going to come over here and close that. Okay, now my mobile client Tom is there. I'm going to go to my advanced settings. I'm going to call this mobile client. Oops, that's the one I just added. I'm going to call this, I'll use small letters, it'll be easier. And I'm going to use a password of 1234. And I'm going to make it on a LAN. Okay. And I'm going to apply the change. And I am not going to apply the change.
Remember, you still have trunks that haven't been saved yet.
Yeah, I'm not going to use that trunk. I'm just going to apply the change, and I'm not going to do the reset that will, well, it doesn't make a difference because that other trunk isn't live. It's probably confused. So I'm going to say cancel. And so it'll make all the changes except to add the trunks, which I actually don't really need anyway. But the trunks will still show up as there. They just aren't functional yet, which is fine because that's not a functional frame. Okay, so I did all this. I go to my panel programming, and my Agent IC, here it is, and that's my blank slate. And it shows me here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 in groups of 6. Now, the reason I'm showing you this, Tom, is this is an interesting question because it depends upon the end user client. If you've got an iPhone, let's say, I don't know, an iPhone 6 that doesn't have a really big screen, you won't be able to see as many buttons as you will on a nice iPad, which can show you all 20 feet. It depends upon your operating system version and your what its ability to draw the buttons is. I think on my Android I get 12 or 18, if I'm not mistaken, but on an Android tablet I can see all 24. Not really sure what the answer is. Any of you Apple users want to chime in and tell me what you typically get?
I've got 24 here.
Okay, on what kind of phone?
iPhone 11.
i11. Okay, so you can
They're
see
not all done. They're not all done.
Right,
but there's 24 slots.
Right. Okay, so here's how I program them. I can take, I'm on the Erskine Vision, I'll just stay within it now. Let's say I want to have a point-to-point to the A1's panel, so I put it there. Again, set it as a talk. I want to have a point-to-point to the director channel. I want to put it there. But I also want to be able to listen to the director in case the director is not pointing directly at me and not on a party line, but talking to somebody else. I can kind of kibitz in on that line, so why not? Okay. And I may want to have the other Agent IC user. I'm going to have a point-to-point too. I'm going to go down to my party lines, and I'm going to come over here. I'm going to hold the control key down so I get both my talk and my listen. If I didn't, I can click here, program the talk, and then click again and program the listen. But it's so much easier just to hit the control, Lamb like that. Now, another thing I can do, by the way, is I can, instead of holding the control, I can hold the Alt key down and click and put it there. And that's going to do something completely different, which is give me an activation of a forced listen. So the listen is always there. I don't have to slide it over to latch it. It's always there. That can be annoying. So if I right-click activation and just go to a regular listen, that's probably the way I would want to use it. Okay. Now, if I look at my other guy that's already been programmed, where is the mobile client ASE user 1? I have a bunch of Dante listens. I have the A1 panel direct and all these party lines, plus a point-to-point to the FreeSpeak belt pack one. Again, I wouldn't really want to listen. I would just delete the listen part, but leave the talk. Okay, other questions coming in. Is it on the agenda roadmap to virtualize more stuff in EHX, for instance, panels, for example, when a producer changes seats in the control room? When well, you can copy and paste and then change the configuration, or you could just reach behind and switch the cables, because remember, everything is connected to the port. But if it's connected virtually, then that's a whole different thing. But all I have to do then is log out on that one and log in. The panel then becomes like a client, and all I have to do is give it the credentials that that particular guy had on the newer panel that he had on the older panel. Where it gets weird is in the analog world, where you have to physically switch them. But at this point now, as far as the software is concerned, we don't make it to flip-flop like that. I don't know that there are a lot of use cases for that. And if you're working in an environment like that, I would suggest Adderall for that producer. But you know, I'm not trying to be judgmental. I'm just saying it's not something that probably happens enough for them to put in the effort to make that kind of a change. I'm not naming the well from which I will not drink, but you know, I'll ask about it. But I don't think it's a feature that they're going to write up anytime soon. Can I assign multiple pages to a mobile client? Multiple pages? No, it's all this one thing here. I mean, obviously you're not going to see on an iPhone or even an Android phone, you're not going to see all of these at once. So you're going to have to scroll. But we'll show you that in a minute when we actually log in and use one. Okay, Miles, hopefully, and somebody remind me to make sure that we get that shown. Miles also asks, can you configure more ports for mobile clients than licensing permits? No. Knowing that active users will be capped at the license amount? No. You can, well, you can configure them, absolutely, but you cannot log in to a frame with more live clients than you have licenses for. So you can make user 1 through 10, but you only have 8 licenses. You'll only be able to use any 8 of those. So you could use user 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 10. You know, you could do that. But once the 9th user consecutively tries to log in, they won't be able to log in. And it's the same thing on LQ. You can do the same thing. You can have way more than you need. Same thing with roles in FreeSpeak belt packs. You know, you can make way more roles than you're ever going to use, but you can only use the amount of roles that you've got slots for. Okay. Question number 4 from Miles, Miles gets the prize for the good questions and the many questions. Quantity and quality, I like that. Does Agent IC have a dial pad for DTMF signal? No, it does not. Can use a native device to the dial. I don't know the answer to that question. Miles, gold star for that. I have never used an Agent IC for something like a TEL 14 that required DTMF. But we will look into that one. Let's put a gold star next to that in the, yeah, thank you. Miles also asked questions on 1RUV series. Does the 1RUV series have a dial pad? And if it does have a pound key, blah, 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 yes, okay, for SIP integration. Okay, I'm going to show you how that works right now, Miles. So I'm going to come over here and stop and let you see my lovely this. And now you don't see my screen anymore. This is a 2RU, and it has a dial pad, okay? So you can use the dial pad to dial. What you would do is you would hit the number 1 to put you into dial mode and then start dialing, okay? However, the 1RU is 1RU. It does not have that dial pad. So what you would do is you would go to the menu and you would select dial, and then you would use these buttons, 1, 5, 1, 0, 9, 8, 7, and so on. And it also has a pound and a star. Okay, sorry for the loud noise. Could have turned that down a little bit. Okay. By the way, while I'm here, I can get out of that. And we were showing some of the people who were not quite used to these V panels. I did want to show something called Listen Again. So if you bear with me a second, if I say something to this panel, let's see, here we go. Check, check, check. Wow, how did that happen? Check, 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 check. Check 1, 2, 3. Check 1, 2, 3. I guess if I turned it up a little bit, I would hear myself a little bit better. Check, check, check. Check, 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 check. There we go. Oh, feedback. Okay. Now let's say I said something like, hey, Ron, when we come back from commercial, I want you to only use the left channel of VTX because there's some issue with the right channel. And I happen to be at the side of the truck smoking a cigarette, which I like to do. And I missed it. I can come over here and push this button. Wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, you know what? I think I didn't program this one to listen for longer than that. Okay, let's try it again. Make it a little bit better. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, come back to listen again. And the aux volume. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, there you go. So I don't know if that's a feature you like or not, but we were talking about that.
The kind of message that I usually get are from the director, and he's giving me a go cue. So I can hear that he gave me a go cue, but I've been out on the outside the truck. So
yeah. So oops. Well, you need get one of those long sticks, and you could move the fader up or whatever. By the way, there's also a message here. So why don't I have a point-to-point? Hang on, give me a second. Let me fix this, because I do want to show you this feature. Panels. This is belt pack 1. Come on, belt pack 1, where I know you're here somewhere. Belt pack 1, there we are. And as you can see, I can program the belt pack just like a panel here. Where's the A1 panel? A1's panel. Oh, it is there. Okay, it's already there. Never mind. Okay. All right. So I can come over here and go into my menu and go into something that's called message and start a recording. Get the mic near my mouth. Hi, it's Rom. I'm on a biological break. My cell number is 510-919-2732. See ya. And then I can just hit play. Hi, it's Rom. I'm on a biological break. And I can leave. Okay, turn that down. Now I can come over here to my headset. My, what do you call it? You want to be able to hear this. I don't know how I'm going to make this work. This is really kludgy. Okay. And I come over here on my belt pack, and I'm going to do a point-to-point to that panel. And I hear that message. See ya. Hi, it's Rom. I'm on a biological break. My cell number is 510-91. Okay. until I come, let's say, you know, I ate some bad beans last night. Oops, they're indestructible. Look at that. Okay. So,
Pull your mic back to your mouth.
oh, sorry, thanks. Okay, until I come back here and I just come out of that, now I'm out of that message. But because I made the message record, which we talked about way earlier today, for a long period of time, I can come back here when I have to go again, go back into my menu, go back to my message, and instead of having to record it again, I just hit play, and it's going to play that message. Again, I can turn it on. The aux volume controls what's coming in the messages, or they'll listen again. The main volume is what's live on there. Okay, so interesting, cool little features on your system that, I don't know, people could live without, but they're fun to know about. All right, let's see what our questions, oh, they're coming in more. Okay. Derek Hirsch, hi Rom. Hi Derek. I have a question here at the end of your presentation. Do you see ClearCom making okay, Derek wants me to wrap it up. It's getting kind of late. He's right. Do you see ClearCom making headway into US-based trucks like NEP, Game Creek, etc.? Thanks. And I'll tell you very frankly, we've made very deep penetration into television stations. And I think because of the support and work that we've done with the truck companies and the leagues, especially during this COVID time, I am confident that we might make some headway in that regard. But the fact of the matter is, and this is just the fact of the matter, is that RTS is in most of the trucks in the United States. It's a fact of life. Every director and producer is comfortable sitting down in front of a KP panel. They don't have to think, they don't have to look. I remember when we put Riedel panels into the HD trucks in the Bay Area, it took a long time for them to warm up to that. They did eventually, and they loved the features that they had, but it takes a while. These people are, you know, they're standing on a razor blade, and they don't want to have to think about anything they don't want to have to think about, which is comms. Nobody cares about comms until you don't have them, okay? As far as I'm concerned, our features are fantastic, but until we get the directors and producers to tell the truck companies to put our stuff in the riders when they build new trucks, it's not going to happen in the United States. Everywhere else in the world, we have very deep penetration. Almost all of China, a decent portion of Europe, almost all of South America is ClearCom.
The lever panels have less of a hindrance because they're at least a lever.
Now that we have the lever panel and it's more like the KP, and we made the KP32, which is more like a KP panel, gives you more real estate, certainly. You know, I'd be a bigger fan of the rotary panel if it had a bigger button on it, physical button. You know, that big giant button on the Riedel panels where the name is recessed with the button itself. What a great idea. And they have knobs. And we took a long time to go to knobs, and I think all these things have played into it. But that's a political question, and I don't see it happening, but I appreciate the thought, Derek. Tom is asking, so if I have an agent IC user needing more than 24 keys, it will require 2 ports, 2 accounts. It will require 2 devices also.
Not even on an iPad? A big screen?
Yeah, 24 keys is, I believe, the limit that we have. I will put in a bug request. We have a whole forum. AIC. I mean, do we really need more than 24 keys? Well, I guess in today's world where everybody's using Agent IC, I'll bring that up at the next World Domination meeting.
Sounds like an opportunity to double the price of a seat, or maybe 1.5 if you ask me, right?
Ah, there you go. Yeah, no, that's interesting. That's very interesting. Okay. Well, look, we've taken an awful lot of your time today. I know we went about an hour over where we wanted to go. I want to take just a moment here while I vamp and bloviate, to give you guys an opportunity, guys and gals, an opportunity, or gals and guys, I should say, an opportunity to, chime in with any other questions that you may want to ask. Also, you have my email address. We're going to put up a slide at the end and make that happen. But, we are Rom, R-O-M, @clearcom.com. I will tell you, I'm not afraid to tell you, my cell number is area code 510-919-2732. Again, 510-919-2732. And as long as I'm not on an airplane or teaching a class, giving a webinar, or in a very reverberant room where you wouldn't want to talk to me anyway, I will answer my phone. I was you for a very, very long time, and I know what it's like to need an answer right away. So I respect that, and I will answer my phone if you call me. So don't be bashful.
And that's what we appreciate about you, Rom.
I don't always have the answers, but I know who to turn to get the answers. So.
No, and I think that's part of the transparency that's so refreshing. Dealing with you, dealing with, things that we're learning. I think, Mac, you'd probably agree. Through this time, we've been stretching the factories and the teams from the factories in ways like today's would be a perfect example. Nobody on the planet is prepared for the emails that we send around on a daily basis, right? We're saying, can we try a little of this, a little of that, and put some mustard on it all for me, please? And I know we certainly get notes from people about, hey, I'd like to stay focused here or focused there, and send every one of your notes in, because if it's at all feasible and reasonable, we'll pull together just about anything. And Rom is the king of pull anything together, he is the lead squirrel herder, right, on the planet, right? His mind's going 63 different directions, all at the same time, all in service to us. I've had the pleasure of being in a few of your in-person presentations, Rom, and now a lot of webinars online with you. And your passion and your love for the industry is second to none. So thank you so much. We're going to keep dreaming up.
By the way, I would encourage that if there's interest, I don't know how many people are still even watching. It's been very long, but I would encourage.
46.
Okay, I would encourage people, if you want to, let us know. There's a lot of stuff we didn't get to today. We didn't talk about how to connect the transceivers. We didn't actually use the Agent IC and show you how it's done. I would like to be able to do that if you're
Absolutely.
interested. Okay.
No, well,
only if you're interested.
So how many buttons is that, Pete?
24.
It's actually 23.
Oh, it's the reply key counts as one.
Right, but all it does, it gets them all in one screen, whereas on an iPhone you have to scroll through the pile.
Scroll, right. Yeah, but that's the limit.
There's your
but
question.
But then if you have to stop in the middle of the show and make a phone call, you have to go like this.
Yeah.
Well, you can get an iTouch and use that.
There we go.
There you go.
So can we have a part 2 of this webinar from Nigeria? Absolutely. Would love an EHX part 2.
I think we're just going to go for a half an hour intermission, go out and have a drink and come back, and we'll just continue on.
You know what? I'm learning a couple secrets about webinaring. One is, going forward, we're going to pick one topic and we're just going to do that. We're going to have Rom on 4 different times doing 4 different topics. Well, so, this is no fault. We have so much information.
You can't cover this in 2 hours. No, or even 3.
People are listening, and I appreciate that. And, I guess to our attendees right now, I would ask you, is it EHX, is it Agent IC, or is it FreeSpeak next, right? Which of those 3, if you could pick one of those 3, give me the order, right? I kind of know how I would think, but you know what? You know,
And in relation to Eclipse, because
in
we've
relation
already
to
seen the
Eclipse
LQ
specifically,
and
right?
we can also review the LQ one and the FreeSpeak base one at any period of time.
See there, hey, squirrel herder.
Can you
gotta-
dynamically add a poll, Kelly? Can you add a
Can we
poll quickly?
dynamically add a poll? That's a great question. I don't think we can on this one. But
Well, maybe an email. We can put an email blast out to everybody who registers.
Oh, we will. I'll do
Yep.
that. So one answer here from Matt. He says EHX part 2, then FreeSpeak 2, then Agent IC, right? And I don't know that I would argue that order because, you know, if you got to understand EHX in order to modify the other things, right? I would say people too that on the website is a plethora, a lot of information at the ClearCom website. I was just over there today asking my question because I'm kind of a highlights kind of person. I'm like, okay, what was the max number of that? What was the max number of that? What was, because I believe in like everything to maximum, right? And then I'll just work back from there. So if I know the maximum is 50 of something, then I can go, okay, I need 12, I need 18, I need 22. I'm good, right? I'm okay. So more on Agent IC beyond the basics. Have it working, delving deeper would be nice. There you go. All right. So we're gonna, and then we got a ditto. So we'll collect all this, and you guys have you got our emails right there. Shoot that on over to me, Pete, Mac. It all comes to us. We'll, in our daily meetings, we'll come up with some more stuff, and then we'll call up Rom and go, hey, what are you doing, Rom? And
Rom, just remember where you are at this moment.
leaving
That'll
the
be where you
house.
stop, and then we'll continue from that point on.
there you go. All right. So
there we go.
So Rom, before we leave, make sure you look at the questions tab on the control panel. Just scroll down. I know that I think Pete's cutting and pasting as fast as he could, or Harlan, but
No, we got them all, I think.
great. Agent IC Trito. All right.
Right.
Or Trito, however you say it. Anyhow, everybody have a good night. Enjoy your dinners. Enjoy your time. Enjoy your
Stay
family.
safe.
We're going to be going outside again pretty soon, and we're all going to be months from now going, man, I remember that time we were sitting with our friends, with our family, and it wasn't so fun right now after week however many, but it's a pretty cool time. Well, all our best thoughts are for everybody that we're going to be out there in the field. And as you said, Rom, we will be. I'm confident.
And if you get really nostalgic for this when we're out in the field, you can come home and sit alone and watch the videos.
Watch the replays.
That's
They're all
right.
recorded on
Is
the
it
archive.
available? All right,
Wow.
guys. Have a great night. Thanks again, Rom.
Good night,
Tell
everybody.
your family thanks for loaning us to you in the kitchen there.
Oh, that's
Exactly.
okay. They're used to it.
All right. So long.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.